Pleased to have with us. As we go along the discussion, I'll introduce each of the speaker. But let me just very quickly take you through the agenda we actually have for today. So we'll be starting with the high-level plenary session where we have been joined by Mr. Harun Sharif. He's the chairman of Pakistan Regional Economic Forum. Mr. Moinul Haq. He's the former ambassador of Pakistan to China. Dr. Shenbi. Dr. Shen has joined us online. Dr. Shen, I hope you can hear us. Yeah, thank you. So Dr. Shenvi is a senior researcher at International Institute of Green Financing. We have Dr. Arfa Iqbal. She's the additional secretary and executive director general at the Board of Investment, Islamabad. And we're very pleased to have with us His Excellency Mr. Shi, is the DCM at the Embassy of People's Republic of China in Pakistan. But again, we're very also pleased to have with us for the same session the chairperson of the Board of Governors of STPI, Ambassador Shafkat Kakakhel. So before I go into any of the thematic or the technical debate, let me invite Ambassador Shafkat Kakakhel Saab on the podium for his opening and welcome remarks. So if you could please join us here at the podium. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellencies, distinguished speakers who will be coming after me, respected colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great privilege for me to welcome you at this high-level conference on China's Global Development Initiative and Pakistan's 5Es framework. I am particularly pleased that the Sustainable Development Policy Institute is convening this dialogue at a moment when Pakistan's development choices require strategic clarity, institutional seriousness, and international cooperation at a much higher level and of a much higher order. We meet at a time when the international environment is marked by conflict, strategic mistrust, economic fragmentation, and uncertainty in global energy and commodity markets. The world has not moved beyond geopolitics. In fact, geopolitics is increasingly being expressed through geoeconomics. Supply chains, technology standards, energy corridors, climate finance, digital infrastructure, trade regimes, and development financing have become instruments of influence and resilience. For countries such as Pakistan, this shift is not an abstract debate. It is directly linked to growth, exports, employment, energy security, climate adaptation, and macroeconomic stability. In this regard, China's Global Development Attention Initiative, I think it was in 2021, deserves serious and sober policy engagement. Its emphasis on the 2030 agenda, the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda, South-South cooperation, poverty reduction, industrialization, digital connectivity, climate action, and green development speaks directly to the structural changes faced by developing countries. Importantly, the GDI also aligns closely with United Nations processes, particularly the Sustainable Development Goals, and which remains the most universally accepted framework for global development cooperation. The United Nations system provides legitimacy, inclusivity, and a rule-based platform through which initiatives such as the GDI can be anchored, monitored, and scaled. The linkage between the GDI and the Global Governance Initiative, which was also formulated by China, is particularly relevant here. The GDI's emphasis on multilateralism, sovereignty, sovereign equality, and inclusive global governance resonates strongly with the principles underpinning the United Nations. Together, these frameworks can enforce the centrality of the United Nations processes in shaping development cooperation, ensuring that it remains transparent, accountable, and aligned with global norms. For Pakistan and other developing countries, this convergence offers an opportunity to strengthen South-South cooperation through United Nations platforms, enabling knowledge sharing, capacity building, and collective problem solving among countries facing similar development challenges. For Pakistan, the relevant question is not whether such initiatives are diplomatically attractive. The real question is how they can be translated into bankable projects, credible institutions, measurable outcomes, and shared prosperity. Pakistan's own reform framework, Udan Pakistan, and the 5 Es provide an important national reference point. Exports, e-Pakistan, environment, energy, and equity are not isolated pillars. They're mutually reinforcing foundations of economic transformation. Without exports, Pakistan remains vulnerable to recurrent balance of payment stress. Without digital transformation, productivity and governance remain constrained. Without environmental resilience, agriculture and industry and cities will face mounting losses. Without affordable and reliable energy, industrialization cannot be competitive. And without equity, development will lack both legitimacy and durability. The convergence between GDI and the 5 Es, therefore, offers a timely policy window. Under CPEC's first phase, Pakistan and China demonstrated that large-scale infrastructure cooperation could be delivered. Under CPEC 2, the emphasis must now shift decisively towards industrial upgrading, export competitiveness, technology transfer, skills formation, green transition, agricultural modernization, and livelihood creation. This is where the GDI can complement Pakistan's development priorities in a practical and targeted manner, particularly when aligned with UN-led development frameworks and South-South cooperation mechanisms. Here, UNEP's experience offers a useful illustration. Through initiatives such as the Partnership for Action on Green Economy page, UNEP has supported countries in aligning economic growth strategies with environmental sustainability, helping governments design policies that promote green industries, resource efficiency, and job creation. Such approaches demonstrate how development cooperation can simultaneously advance economic transformation and environmental resilience. An approach that is directly relevant to Pakistan's 5 E's framework, especially the environment and energy pillars, and can be reinforced through GDI supported projects. At the same time, we should approach the discussion with diplomatic maturity and policy realism. Development cooperation must be anchored in national ownership, transparency, financial prudence, environmental safeguards, and social inclusion. Pakistan must avoid the familiar trap of treating external cooperation as a substitute for development for domestic reform. No international initiative can compensate for weak implementation, fragmented regulation, delayed decision-making, or institutional inertia. The value of GDI will be realized only and only if Pakistan develops a clear pipeline of priority projects, coherent coordination mechanisms, and credible regulatory pathways through an environmentally compliant business-to-business investment. The broader Chinese framework, including the Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative, Global Governance Initiative, and Global Civilization Initiative, also invites reflections on the relationship between peace, development, and governance. Development cannot flourish in an atmosphere of persistent insecurity. Security cannot be sustained without economic opportunity. Governance cannot be legitimate unless it is inclusive, rule-based, and responsive to the needs of people. This integrated approach is especially relevant for the global south, where debt, stress, climate vulnerability, energy insecurity, and technological exclusion often reinforce one another. Here again, the United Nations provides a critical platform where these interlinkages can be addressed collectively and where South-South cooperation can be institutionalized and scaled. For Pakistan, this means that cooperation with China should be viewed not narrowly as project financing, but as a platform for structural transformation. We need cooperation that helps firms export more, farmers use more water prudently and energy more efficiently. Young people acquire digital skills, industries decarbonize, financial institutions mobilize green capital, and provinces participate meaningfully in development planning. The success of this cooperation will ultimately be judged not by the number of memoranda signed, but by the factories revived, jobs created, emissions reduced, exports increased, and citizens empowered. There are several areas where today's discussion can make a practical contribution. I'll mention a few. First, we need to identify priority sectors where GDI and 5Es can overlap most directly: industrial parks, renewable energy, grid modernization, electric mobility, agricultural technology, digital public infrastructure, vocational training, climate adaptation, and green finance. Second, Pakistan must develop a more disciplined institutional mechanism for matching Chinese technical and financial cooperation with national and provincial level development priorities. A fragmented approach will only dilute impact. A coordinated approach can generate scale, particularly if aligned with UN development planning frameworks. Third, we must place technology transfer and capacity building at the very center of cooperation. Infrastructure without knowledge transfer creates dependency. Infrastructure with skills, standards, and institutional learning creates transformation. UN agencies and South-South cooperation platform can play a catalytic role in facilitating such exchanges. Fourth, we must explore how Pakistan can use CPEC 2 to move from connectivity to productivity. Roads and power plants were necessary, but the next step must be exports, industrial value addition, research partnerships, special economic zones, and integration into regional and global value chains. Fifth, energy cooperation should now be evaluated through the lens of affordability, reliability, and sustainability. Pakistan's energy challenge is no longer only about adding capacity, it's also about reducing system inefficiencies, improving governance, integrating renewables, modernizing the grid, and ensuring that energy supports industrial competitiveness rather than becoming a fiscal burden. Sixth, climate and development must be treated together. Pakistan cannot afford a development model that increases vulnerability. Cooperation under GDI should help strengthen climate-resilient agriculture, urban adaptation, disaster preparedness, low-carbon industrialization, and access to climate finance, particularly through United Nations climate mechanism. Seventh, digital cooperation must go beyond hardware. It should include data governance, cybersecurity, digital skills, e-commerce, artificial intelligence for public services, and digital inclusion for women, youth, and underserved communities. Eighth, equity must remain central. Development diplomacy, if it is to command public trust, must be people-centered. Projects should create decent jobs, reduce regional disparities, include smaller firms, and improve opportunities for young Pakistanis. As chairperson of SDPI's Board of Governors, I also wish to underline the role of independent policy institutions in this process. Think tanks can help translate broad diplomatic frameworks into actionable policy choices. They can provide evidence, facilitate dialogue, identify risks, evaluate outcomes, and build bridges between government, private sector, academia, civil society, and international partners. This is precisely the purpose of today's conference. Pakistan and China have a relationship that has long been described in strategic terms. The task before us now is to deepen its economic, technological, environmental, and human development content. In a world of uncertainty, durable partnerships will be those that produce stability, resilience, and shared welfare. That's the spirit in which we should examine the Global Development Initiative and its relationship with Pakistan's 5E framework, while also leveraging the legitimacy and inclusivity of United Nations processes to strengthen South-South cooperation. I hope today's deliberations will move beyond general endorsement and help identify concrete pathways for implementation, which sectors, which institutions, which financial instruments, which regulatory reforms, and which measurable outcomes. Diplomacy opens doors, but policy walks through them. Our responsibility is to ensure that this conversation contributes to practical progress. With these words, I warmly welcome all of you, all the distinguished participants, and look forward to a substantive, candid, and forward-looking discussion. And I thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador Shafkat Kaka Khail Saab, for highlighting the significance of strong diplomatic alignment and also very strong diplomacy. So SDPI, I think we again, especially through the support of Embassy of People's Republic of China, we kind of established a China Studies Center, and one of the very key programs we're running under it is CPEC Green Development Program that kind of looks after some of the very important pillars that Ambassador Saab have already highlighted. How do we actually green the investments coming in? Because I mean, there's already a very strong focus of the upcoming investments of China in Pakistan and how they're more tilted towards developing green infrastructure, such as such a high influx of the solar PVs in Pakistan. So these are some of the very key fundamentals SDPI within its program is actually exploring, ranging from the green industrialization to the localization of the technology and all. So for this, we are very pleased to have with us Dr. Khalid Waleed. Dr. Khalid Waleed is a research fellow and looks after the energy as well as the programs within SDPI. So with this, I'll request Dr. Khalid to join us at the podium for a brief presentation. I'll request the MIS team to, if they can please share it on the screen as well. So Dr. Khalid, to you.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. I warmly thank Ambassador Shafkat Kaka Khail for the opening. I would be very brief on what Pakistan can leverage in these times. This is a very brief scene-setting presentation. I know after me, experts, they have more expertise in diplomatic as well as industrialization relations with China. So in Pakistan, the growth model has hit, I think, its ceiling. Pakistan's consumption-led, import-dependent model, it keeps hitting the same foreign exchange wall. Just like Shafkat Kaka Khail mentioned, no foreign assistance, no foreign program can substitute or change the internal domestic policy decision. I think we need to have some structural, not cyclical approach. For decades, growth has run on consumption and imports, and every acceleration has ended in a balance of payment crisis, which is a disaster for Pakistan in a cyclical manner. The productive base is thinning. I give you some numbers. If you compare FDI patterns from 2019 to 2025, it has declined by 46%. It is a textbook case of premature deindustrialization, which is unfortunate for Pakistan. So our industrialization is stalled. There are foreign exchange constraints, deindustrialization concerns, energy and climate stress, which needs a formal institutional reforms. This is where the National Economic Transformation Plan, or UDAN Pakistan, comes in. Just like Ambassador Kaka Khail mentioned, there are 5 E's in this plan. Exports double around 60 billion by 2029. E-Pakistan, which is focused on digital economy and connectivity. Environment, which is focused on climate resilience and green growth. Energy, it focuses on affordable, secure, low carbon power. And equity, that is the last E of this 5E, inclusive, people-centered, uplifting Pakistan's youth bulge, gender, and other avenues. Under UDAN Pakistan, that is 2024 to 2029, it targets a 3 trillion techno economy by 2047. The direction is correct, but the question this conference must answer is how to plan for it. how we are going to get these numbers. Next slide, please. Okay, the GDI is a financing and capability channel, not a slogan. It has connected the world in this defragmented times. China's Global Development Initiative is a structural channel for development finance and technical cooperation, and Pakistan is already inside it. China proposed the GDI initiative in 2021 to accelerate the UN 2030 agenda. It concentrates on 8 priority areas, including industrialization, the digital economy, climate change, green development. Exactly the trend or 5E initiative follows. So under GDI, 23 billion has been mobilized in development finance, 1,800 plus cooperation project launched, 130 plus countries involved. As CPEC enters its phase 2, which we call CPEC 2.0, the focus shifts from mega infrastructure to industry, livelihood, digital cooperation, and people-to-people cooperation. In simple terms, distinctive way, I refer CPEC 1 as the hardware of growth and CPEC 2.0 as a software of growth. I think we need to have a very good combination of hardware plus software for the growth, which CPEC 2.0 offers. Next slide, please. Okay, in CPEC's first phase, there was 70 billion USD investment and 4.62 gigawatt, particularly in terms of coal, hydro, and nuclear in terms of Pakistan's energy sector. But the overhang, it is 2.1 trillion per year in terms of capacity payments against 1.84 trillion of circular debt since February 2026. So there is investment, there are finance flows from China to Pakistan, but domestically, we could not harness the potential of CPEC 1 because of the policy gaps, because of the misalignment of economy and energy policies in Pakistan, and because of the several missed growth projections in country. So that caused some havoc as well. Next slide, please. So this is where GDI and 5Es, they actually meet. GDI priority areas, industrial capacity building, 5E pillar is exports, digital connectivity, links to Pakistan's e-Pakistan, green and climate development, environment plus energy, and lastly, the people-centered cooperation. It directly connects with the equity pillar of the 5E model. Next slide, please. These are 4 innovative instruments for finance, particularly when you want financing these 5E initiative. This aligned vision is not enough. You need practical solution for attracting more finance, particularly in B2B phases. First one is M-Bridge and RMB settlement. M-Bridge is China's initiative. That is China-led multi-CBDC platform. China has connected the central banks of Middle East, Southeast Asian economies, and China so that they have clear trade and financial flows in local currency and in RMB, cutting dollar dependence and cost. Second is Pakistan's recent issuance of panda bonds, particularly the green panda bonds, plus the debt for climate swaps. If Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Climate Change, they sort of integrate and use this panda bonds or green panda bonds for as a debt for climate swap arrangement, that could be a very game changer for Pakistan, particularly in the CPEC phase 2. Third is carbon markets, particularly the Paris Agreement's Article 6.2. While announcing China's NDC's 3.0, President Xi categorically mentioned Article 6.2 and mentioned that China would be increasing its carbon market, particularly the Article 6.2 country-to-country ITMOs transfer. That could be a good market to have in Pakistan because China has this world's largest carbon market. Pakistan has this potential to generate carbon credits and trade in Chinese market as well. And then fourth is SDPI has done lots and lots of research on this, that is Coal to Clean Credit Initiative. What this initiative does is, this initiative early retires coal power plants and converts them into carbon credits. If these power plants are underutilized, they can be repurposed into battery energy storage systems. This is where Pakistan's capacity payment challenge plus Pakistan's climate finance commitment can meet, and Pakistan can not only solve its fiscal crisis of capacity charges, Pakistan can be a leader in attracting climate finance through Article 6.2 of climate Paris Agreement, using carbon credit market as well. And this will create more room for renewable energy investments in Pakistan, as we would be early retiring our existing capacity, which is already underutilized. Next slide, please. The highest value is, again, in moving from finance to industry. This is where another report of STPI comes in. We recently did a report. Sarem's analysis was sodium-ion batteries. They cause less environmental harm, and they have the right ingredients residing in Pakistan, particularly in terms of raw materials. In lithium-ion batteries, the mining of lithium has a very stress on environment, but in sodium-ion batteries, you need salt, and Pakistan has huge reserves of salt. And for anode and cathode, all the materials are readily available in Pakistan as well. So if there is some localization of battery energy technologies, particularly shifting from lithium-ion batteries to sodium-ion batteries. Recently, we have seen that CATL, that is China's largest battery energy manufacturer, they have experimented with sodium-ion batteries, and they have achieved almost the similar results with lithium-ion batteries. So there is a clear-cut avenue for investment and localization, integrating Chinese industries to Pakistan's special economic zones, training the labor, harnessing the demographic dividend, and connecting it with green energy revolution. Just like Ubaid mentioned, Pakistan has recently experienced this solar boom. The next boom would be battery boom. So if we, in first phase, was not able to indigenize or localize the solar manufacturing in Pakistan, maybe in second phase, we can localize and indigenize the battery energy production manufacturing with the help of China in Pakistan. Next slide, please. This would be the second last slide. The alignment is real, but it is not automatic. We need three conditions, preconditions, I would say, so that it would work. First is foreign exchange neutral by design. It should not cause a foreign exchange stress on Pakistan's economy. Instrument must be in local currency, maybe in RMB, concessional or non-debt creating. More dollar borrowing repeats the phase one overhang. Second is regulatory pathways. State Bank of Pakistan, they have come up with green taxonomy, SECP, and the Board of Investment. They should have clear rails for RMB assistance, carbon credits, and CBDC settlements. Just like Pakistani financial institution should directly talk in a language of Chinese financial institution. That I think should be the way forward. And then I think Harun Sharif has authority on this, a bankable pipeline project map to the 5 E's with real return, just transition safeguards, and not a wish list seeking finance. Next slide, please. This is what today's conference looks like. Second roundtable would be focused on low carbon development, and the last roundtable would be on energy cooperation model. And lastly, to conclude, today's FIFA World Cup results shows that, last slide, please, that Morocco has beaten Netherlands, Paraguay has beaten Germany, which means the smaller teams, they are now beating the bigger teams. But for that, you need, just like in football, as in development, size and legacy do not guarantee victory. What matter is alignment, strategy, capability, execution, and belief. That is deeper logic behind South-South cooperation. So just like Latin America, South America has beaten Germany, and Morocco has beaten Netherlands, maybe with South-South cooperation, we can have our development pathways clear. Thank you so much. Looking forward to an insightful discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Khalid, for setting the agenda, highlighting why. The whole idea behind is that how do we actually go forward? How should the energy and economic cooperation model between Pakistan and China looks like? And I think just like with this, we'll be moving towards the plenary. And Dr. Khalid has already hinted that we're very pleased to have with us Mr. Haroon Sharif sir. Will be starting from you. Dr. Khalid has already kind of mentioned a few of the points where we would perhaps also like to listen from you, that if we kind of look into Pakistan's long-term economic transformation, it kind of depends upon moving beyond stabilization policies towards a productivity as well as an investment-led growth model. So, sir, from your perspective, how do you actually think in China's GDI complement Pakistan's 5E framework by supporting some of these structural reforms that enhance industrial competitiveness, attract investment, and also promote sustainable economic growth? So, sir, we would request you to, if you could just come at the podium for your address. Thank you so much.
I think now it's working. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very good morning and assalamu alaikum to everybody. His Excellency, my friend, Mr. Shi, Ambassador Kaka Khail, Ambassador Moin al-Haq, Dr. Arfa, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for, inviting me to this very important topic. As Mr. Kaka Khail said, that we need to be candid, honest, and solution-oriented. So please forgive me if I say certain things which are less diplomatic, but I assure you that these are done based on my 35 years of experience of delivering development across the globe. So I would like to share a few things here. Very quickly, we cannot isolate development of this region and Pakistan from what's happening at the global scene. So few things as a reminder. So multilateral system is at the moment in a real threat. It's been bypassed everywhere. And we have seen that time and again. So we got to see that is multilateral system the right house to take forward development agendas at the sub-regional level. Number two, United Nations is more irrelevant than it was ever before in terms of any global issue, be it development or conflict or politics. So what does it mean? So we need to do deeper thinking. Can we really make it more effective? It's a legitimate multilateral forum. Or as we are moving away from globalization, we need to carve the way for a regional multilateral architecture. Now, that's a question when we say South-South cooperation, we need to think about, because global institutions have failed to give solutions for a variety of reasons. And, they are being bypassed. Development budgets in all over the world are being shifted, mostly to defense and security. That's a reality. And Pakistan is no exception to that. So when the budgets are shifting and GDI talks about development at the center of, policy planning, there I see contradiction. What's the trend happening? China is doing the right thing, advising the right thing, but the global, realities and numbers are contradicting it. And we have recently seen Pakistan's budget, which is also a reflection of that shift. Human rights are nowhere to be seen, frankly speaking, in dialogue. Now, that's the globe we are living in. So let's get real and look for solutions for people of Pakistan, China, and the region. In the region, there is a ray of hope after the Iran, agreement with the US, that perhaps conflict in the coming years will shift towards more stability and peace and economic growth, which is a very positive sign. Having said that, Afghanistan remains an outlier in the region. India, Pakistan are not talking. So the region remains in an intense political logjam. And we got to take into cognizance that can you do development, in that particular environment. CPEC has done a good basic foundation, but let's be honest, investors have not invested in the CPEC infrastructure, private investors. And that's where the policy failure very clearly evident in Pakistan. It was our job to make CPEC infrastructure attractive to private capital. It hasn't happened. Now, the question is how to make it happen. And mind you, the capital will come from private sector, will not come from fiscally stressed states, So that is where the challenge of GDI in coming days, is very, very clear. Now, it is like music to my ears as a development economics, student, that GDI speaks about priorities of human development, priorities of innovation, priorities of, connecting to nature, priorities of expanding industry. But I would like to raise few, again, practical, questions. I think if we need to take GDI and Pakistan's development agenda forward, which is stuck for 30 years, as Dr. Khalid, that somebody mentioned, that the overall trajectory of Pakistan's GDP growth is on a declining, pattern for 30 years. It hovers between 3 to 4%, but on a declining pattern. Population is rising. Competition is rising. The only way it can go forward is that if we think development through the lens of competitive partnerships, no grants, no handouts, build a competitive foundation which can yield results in 10, 15, 20 years. There is no, magic transformation. Number of people speak about transformation. As a student of development, Pakistan is going through a painful transition. No transformation is expected unless, major systems are changed. Towards the, delivery of development assistance has gone through various phases. When I look at, my own career, we have seen that the independent institutional setups, which I'm very proud to be part of it in designing those, have delivered results rather than spreading, global assistance into tiny little number of projects. So you got to have focused. For instance, Poverty Reduction Alleviation Fund has been an intervention which has, managed to bring in the microfinance sector in Pakistan. It's an institutional arrangement. I myself arranged, almost 60 million pounds for Punjab Skills Development Fund. Karandas, financial inclusion, the word, I'm very proud that I introduced to State Bank and now everybody is talking about. The question is, central bank was a strong institution to take it forward. Can we at the moment, Your Excellency, have no institution for GDI delivery? It is basically talk about very good things. So is 5E, by the way. I wish my friend Hassan Iqbal Sahab was here. Having good wishes, good plans, good books is one thing. Converting into institutional delivery is totally a different thing. China established NDRC when connectivity was to be done, an institutional arrangement to take it forward. So I have few suggestions for this audience to think and talk about if we are, obviously seriously talking about development in Pakistan and in the region. I think first and the foremost is that GDI must have a regional secretariat in Pakistan. And that secretariat can be done through partnerships. When Mr. Loh, the former minister of SIDCA, came, I signed an MOU with him almost a year back. Unfortunately, Chinese embassy did not follow up on that. Otherwise, we would have gotten this secretariat by now. Number two, GDI has a beauty that it has a window for concessional project financing, which is very different from traditional aid mechanisms. Now, who will do the diligence and project screening? The fashionable word is bankable projects. Where is the bank? You do a bankable project, but incidentally, there is no bank to finance it. What is Pak China Investment Company doing? I think we need massive restructuring to make it a development financing institution to deliver GDI objectives. Technical assistance management. Who will manage the technical assistance for industry? We need sector studies. We need, comparative advantage identification. We need modern innovation practices. We need technology infusion. There is no institutional house to do it. Many countries have moved that thing out of the government. It has to be done in partnership with world-class business schools, universities, and other outfits to deliver that technical assistance. I caution everybody, based on my little experience, depending on state institutions is a mistake. It has not delivered, it will not deliver. You need to delegate development to independent, good institutions to take it forward. One or two more things, and I will stop. I think I've been reasonably provocative, but I think time has come that we talk openly. I would like to propose to this forum that CPEC should not be managed by Planning Ministry anymore. If you are doing private sector-led industrial expansion, what does Planning Ministry have to do with it? It is basically to be done with the private sector-led independent space, which should take it forward, linked to financial institutions. And that is where, if you want transformation, then you need to break the old school status quo. The planning part is over. You need to deliver investment. You need to attract investment. You need to speak their language. You need to come up with incentives. And you need to have a very good coordination between various arms of the state, including regulatory parties. So my suggestion is, and it's not a criticism, if you need to take it forward, then China and Pakistan should sit down and talk about it, that what is the best institutional mechanism to deliver development, in Pakistan. And finally, I would say once again that it is great to have such seminars and events, but you need to build a strategic communication institutionally with people of Pakistan who matter, with the constituencies who matter, the constituencies of private sector, the constituencies of human development, the constituencies of research. So let's take it out of Islamabad, because they don't exist interestingly in Islamabad only. So we need to have, again, a strategic communication network. I once again say that GDI is a great ray of hope. It aligns with best practices. It talks about solutions. It speaks about targets, but unfortunately, we have no structure to take it forward independently, effectively, and transparently. And that is where China and Pakistan should sit down. I'm afraid if we continue talking at the state-to-state level, it will be very nice photo ops and headlines, but we will fall under the same trajectory which we have been told by Dr. Khalid and others for years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harun Saab, for speaking really candidly. And I think we do share a lot of these proposals. And also just to mention that last year what SDPI did was we kind of initiated this advisory group, which was basically the advisory group of financing institutions that are present in Pakistan. And again, very pleased to have with us a number of banks, including the Bank of Punjab and a couple more, and even at some of the policy banks at the China side as well. And the idea was to make a connect between the financing institutions within China and Pakistan. And of one of the very key members within that group, we actually both of them are present online, Dr. Christoph Nedopil as well as Dr. Shen Wei. So, I mean, after Harun Shah, I'll come to Dr. Shen Wei from IGF. Dr. Shen Wei, are you with us? Yes. So yes, Dr. Shenvi, I think, I mean, as the GDI again has successfully mobilized development financing across the global south, could you also elaborate on specific financial architecture of this initiative, what it exactly is? And from a green financing perspective, how do the GDI's funding mechanism kind of differ from the traditional lending? And if there are any direct channels through which Pakistan can access these specific pools of capital for its low carbon transition. And apart from that, if you want to add any further points to this platform. So Dr. Shenvi, over to you.
Thank you very much. And distinguished guests, excellencies, and ladies and gentlemen, and it is an honor to address this distinguished high-level conference on China's Global Development Initiative and the Pakistan's Far East Framework. I do apologize for not being able to attend this event in person. I'm about to embark a very long field study in Africa. But nevertheless, I'm very glad to join even remotely at this critical juncture for Pakistan's development trajectory. And today's dialogue will be, I think, a very useful reflection regarding the practical roadmap for the sustainable transformation in the country. Let me begin by framing the global development initiatives in this kind of a strategic context. And the GDI is one of China's 4 core international initiatives alongside those focused on security, civilization, and governance, as already explained by previous speakers. However, the GDI stand out as the only initiative exclusively to address the development aspirations of the Global South countries. So it is uniquely designed to respond to the structural deficits that many developing economies now facing, such as industrialization, digital or conventional infrastructure development, or climate resilience. And for countries like Pakistan, the GDI is not an kind of abstract framework. It is a concrete mechanism for accessing development financing and technological cooperation and South-South knowledge exchange that directly targets the most pressing needs faced by different countries. So I think one of the unique advantages that distinguish China as a development partner is its unique capacity to integrate trade, investment, and development aid into a kind of a comprehensive and synergistic approach. So few countries can simultaneously deploy large-scale project financing and facilitating technology transfer and maintain a robust bilateral trade flows all together towards a common bilateral development framework. So this multi-line coordination is precisely what makes GDI a powerful vehicle for Pakistan's economic transformation. I'm focusing on energy sector in my study. So I think I just use energy sector to illustrate why this synergy is the most tangible and impactful. I think we will have a specific roundtable for energy sector, but just let me kind of kick off this conversation a little bit early stage. So we developed recently we developed a database in IGF of Chinese overseas renewable energy activities. If you look at our database, the result of China-Pakistan Energy Cooperation since 2022 has been remarkable. We're currently tracking around 20 or so major investment projects currently under implementation, with a combined installed capacity exceeding 25 gigawatts And critically, the vast majority of these projects are in clean energy, such as hydro, solar, wind, green hydrogen, energy storage, you name it. This represents not just a quantitative expansion, but a qualitative shift towards a greener, a more sustainable energy mix. And meanwhile, in the trade dimension, Pakistan imports more than 50 gigawatts of solar panels in the same period of time, I mean, after 2022, from China, which is directly enabling transformative changes in Pakistan's highly complex challenging energy system. So together, these investments and these construction projects and the trade flows have made a significant contribution to at least the two core pillars of 5Es framework, which is about environment or climate change and energy. They are actually helping Pakistan decarbonize its power sector, improve energy security, and lay the foundation for a cleaner industrial base. If you allow me, I think the next phase of China-Pakistan partnership, particularly in the green energy sector, holds greater promise. And I would like to highlight three specific areas or frontiers where deeper cooperation could significantly accelerate to across entire 5Es agenda. First is about digital power system. As Pakistan moves towards a more complex energy grid with rising shares of variable renewables, the need for smarter grid technologies and modern electricity market architectures become imperative. I think China's experience in building intelligent dispatch system, real-time monitoring, market-based pricing mechanisms in the past decade offers a kind of a fresh and a ready blueprint. So cooperation in these areas will not only improve grid stability, but also reduce transmission losses and enhance revenue prospects and then the credibility of the grid, and create a more transparent energy market, more transparent price signals that benefit directly the support of the so-called E-Pakistan pillar. And the second is about localization of renewable energy manufacturing, which is already taking off. I think we see already several projects in the pipeline. Pakistan has a growing domestic market for solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, and so on. So rather than remaining a pure importer in the previous decade, there is a significant opportunity to establish local assembly manufacturing capacities in partnership with Chinese firms. This would create not just jobs, but industrial skills. Everything is not about value addition, but knowledge addition, skills addition, capacity addition. So that will reduce import bills as well and support the export pillar of 5Es that eventually developing a regional supply chain. And the transition from China-made, Pakistan-used to a China-supported, Pakistan-made model is more or less like the logical next steps in our bilateral energy relationship. And the third is the expansion of off-grid and mini-grid solutions for Pakistan's rural and remote areas, but also some areas in the urban context as well, many of which will remain outside the national grid in the foreseeable future, but decentralized energy system offer a cost-effective and a rapid solution. Chinese technology in solar home systems, microgrids, energy storage is mature and is scalable, given a proper institutional context and a market environment. And so deploying these solutions would enhance energy access, improve livelihoods, and directly advance the equity pillar of the 5Es. So ensuring that benefits the energy, everybody benefits the energy transition within the society. So these three areas, digital grid modernization, localized manufacturing, off-grid electrification, are not just the technical upgrades. They are strategic enablers that will strengthen the interconnections among the 5Es pillars A smarter grid enables a more competitive export sector, local manufacturing capacities create jobs and reduce external vulnerability. Off-grid solutions promote social equity and regional balances. I think together they represent a comprehensive pathway of embedding the GDI's people-centered philosophy into Pakistan's economic fabric. So in closing, the alignment between China's GDI and Pakistan 5 East framework is not a coincidence. It is a convergence of strategic vision and practical necessity, as at least illustrated in the energy sector. So the achievements of the past few years have demonstrated that what is possible when trade, investment, development aids, they all work in concert. So I think the next phase focused on digital system, localization, inclusive access will determine whether we can translate these gains into a lasting structural transformation in Pakistan. I will stop here and thank you so much again for inviting me and looking forward for more exciting discussions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shenvi, for highlighting the Chinese element of the GDI and also the inputs around the energy sector. Thank you so much. And I think we actually have been discussing a lot the way the Chinese investment inflows into the countries have been changing. So now with this, let me come to the Mr. Moinul Haq Saab. Sir, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Moinul Haq Saab is the former ambassador of Pakistan to China. Sir, if you could please join us at the podium for your interventions. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Shi Yuangqiang, my dear friend, DCM from Chinese Embassy in Islamabad, Ambassador Shafkat Kakakhail, Mr. Harun Sharif, Dr. Arfa Iqbal, Mr. Shin Wei from joining from China, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, Zhao Shang Hao, and good morning. It's a pleasure for me to join today at this important event organized by Sustainable Development Policy Institute on an important topic of Global Development Initiative and Pakistan's 5 E's framework. And I thank SDPI for getting together the policy makers, practitioners, and diplomats, and other important scholars to discuss this important topic. Ladies and gentlemen, the 21st century will be remembered for a series of landmark initiatives launched by President Xi Jinping, beginning with Belt and Road Initiative in 2013 and followed by, of course, Global Development Initiative in 2021, Global Security Initiative, Global Civilization Initiative, and then recently, Global Governance Initiative. And together, these initiatives represent a framework, a comprehensive framework aimed at what China calls, and President Xi calls, building a community with a shared future for mankind. Now, this vision emerged at a time when international system has been undergoing profound transformation. And President Xi has many times mentioned that the unprecedented changes taking place in a century. For the last decade or so, and recently also, we have witnessed in our region also the shifting global power politics and intensifying the rivalries, geopolitical rivalries. And then, of course, we are facing non-traditional threats of climate change, pandemic, and widening economic inequalities. You would recall that when President Xi announced GDI in 2021 during his online address to UNGA session. At that time, the world was witnessing or going through COVID-19 pandemic. Economies were contracting, supply chains were under pressure, poverty levels were rising, and many developing countries, including Pakistan, were struggling to recover from the social and economic consequences of the crisis. So what GDI did, that it responded and placed development back at the center of the international agenda. And as Ambassador Kakakhil mentioned, that it aligned with UN SDGs. Of course, it emphasized poverty reduction, food security, industrialization, digital connectivity and green development, and people-centered growth. The core message was that development remains the master key to unlocking answers to the many challenges confronting humanity. In the years since its launch, GDI from a concept has now become an important platform cooperation. And in this story, Pakistan holds and occupies a special place. Just as CPEC became the flagship project, pioneer project of BRI, Pakistan became the first partner country of GDI when the MOU on this cooperation, on this partner country recognition was signed during Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's visit to China in November 2022. And I have the honor to sign that MOU with my dear friend, Ambassador Liu Jiahui, who was at that time the chairman of Sitka. This was not merely a diplomatic milestone, but also reflected the trust, the high-level trust between China and Pakistan, and our shared commitment to development-led cooperation. Today, China-Pakistan economic cooperation has entered a very important phase. A key part of that is CPEC 2.0, which is a strategic evolution from an infrastructure-led growth to a broader development agenda centered on industrial cooperation, innovation, green development, and human welfare. In this regard, of course, as mentioned earlier, there is a convergence between the objectives of CPEC 2.0, GDI, and Pakistan's 5Es framework. I hope that you recall, many of you, that under CPEC 2.0, 5 corridors were announced by our two countries. They provide a useful framework for understanding this convergence between GDI and 5Es. The first corridor was the corridor of growth, which seeks to promote industrialization. SEZs, subject very close to Dr. Arfa Iqbal, BOI and SFIC and NDRC. Manufacturing competitiveness, which was, of course, Dr. Harun Sharif Saab also spoke about, and export expansion. Corridor of innovation, which aims to strengthen science, technology, and digital infrastructure and knowledge-based growth. This complements, of course, with Pakistan's e-Pakistan's pillar. Green corridor supports climate resilience, renewable energy, and environmental protection, mirror very closely with Pakistan's own environmental priorities and GDI's commitment to green development and climate action. The livelihood enhancement corridor focuses on poverty reduction and human source development, healthcare, agriculture. And finally, the corridor of opening up and regional connectivity, which promotes trade facilitation, regional integration, and logistics. Together, these 5 corridors demonstrate that CPEC 2.0 and GDI are not parallel initiatives, rather they are mutually reinforcing that can support Pakistan's national development objectives. Here, I would like to few words about what Mr. Harun Sharif said. Two things which very important. He said his speech was provocative, but I think he was very candid, and I fully agree with what he has recommended in terms of what challenges that Pakistan is facing, very elaborately given in his presentation by Dr. Khalid also. Harun Saab mentioned about setting up a secretariat of GDI for which an MOU was also signed. I think I agree with him, but at the same time, setting up secretariats have to be supported by two governments. There has to be strong political support and political consensus for setting such secretariats, because we know the fate of a CPEC secretariat. So whatever institution is there, whether it's a planning ministry, whether it's a NDRC or a new GDI secretariat, we need to have that political support, institutional capacity, that strength and independence for these institutions to work and carry out their mandate for project program management. Secondly, I think he mentioned a very important part which we have not been able to harness between the two countries. Mr. Hassan Iqbal, the planning minister, has been talking about, and rightly saying, that CPAC 2.0 should be about not G2G relationship, but B2B relationship. The private sectors of the two countries would have to lead the next stage of 2.0. Recently, I think or you must have read that Gul Ahmed announced a 200 million plus project of establishing a data center in Pakistan, partnering with Huawei, a landmark initiative in building this technology-driven institution in Pakistan. Dr. Khalid said that Pakistan by 1947 would have to harness, or looking at 3 trillion of investments or revenues. It's a big amount. To achieve that, of course, we have to support the two private sectors of our two countries. They will be able to bring not only technology, innovation, skills, but also the capital needed for that. And this important project by Gul Ahmed is just one example. Pakistan government has to focus on technology. We talk about Technopolis, special technology zones, but there has to be support from the government in terms of policy, sustainability, and then facilities and incentives for the investors to come and invest in Pakistan. GDI, as we mentioned about, somebody asked that what about the development financing. I think GDI can help us access development financing and technical cooperation, capacity building in China and through other South-South development partners. CPAC 2.0 provides the established platform for implementation, and the 5E framework provides Pakistan's national roadmap. So with these three frameworks operating in synergy, I think they can create a powerful momentum for economic transformation. But of course, being a government servant, I know that ultimately the plans and frameworks we would be able to sign and MOUs, but the key would be that implementation and follow-up. How policy consistency, institutional coordination, and regulatory reforms and investment facilitation, and above all, sustained political commit are important for these important initiatives to be able to succeed. This year, the two countries are celebrating the 75th anniversary of China-Pakistan diplomatic relations, a very important milestone. I think this is an important time to bring a renewed focus to our economic partnership. And in this respect, I think GDI, CPEC 2.0, and Pakistan 5Es are not only important policy instruments, but also complementary pillars for a shared vision for prosperity. I thank SDPI once again for this conference and inviting me to speak at this conference, and I wish it all success. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Moinul Haq Saab. And I think just key takeaways is that a very, really important point as of now for Pakistan's both economic as well as energy security is its industrial transformation. I think Moin Saab has already pointed to Dr. Arfa. We have been joined by Dr. Arfa Iqbal. Dr. Arfa is Executive Director and Secretary at the Board of Investment. So with this, I'll invite Dr. Arfa on the podium. Dr. Arfa, again, a lot of developments happening around the special economic zones. So really look forward to hearing from you. And then we'll be coming to our special guest, His Excellency, after Dr. Arfa. So thank you so much, Dr.
Very distinguished speakers, honorable ladies and gentlemen, participants online, a very good morning to all of you. And to begin with, I'm very grateful to SDPI for always giving me this opportunity to connect with the August audience and share my views on some very important topics. Most of the people in the room, they already know me, but just quickly, why I'm here? Because I served in China for 4 years as commercial counselor. And then I did PhD from Peking University in development economics. And currently I'm heading SCZ wing and B2B engagements with China, B2B, which has been repeatedly mentioned here by the August speakers, and China desk, both at SIFC and Board of Investment. The topic today, GDI, but I will drag it a little bit earlier to 2013, when BRI was announced, because that starts the very active contribution of China in the global economic scenario. So 2013, BRI, CPEC, one of the 6 economic corridors within the framework of BRI. 2015 digital corridor was established or announced. 2021 GDI was announced. And in 2023, based on the concept of GDI, based on the concept of BRI, based on the concept of a digital corridor, President Xi Jinping, during the 3rd Belt and Road Forum in Beijing, October 2023, he enumerated a list of 8 important steps for high quality BRI development. Now, based on the same 8 points, exactly a year later, October 2024, when Honorable Chinese Premier Mr. Li Qiang visited Pakistan, in the joint statement, 5 corridors were mentioned. A little later, a few months later, in February 2025, when President Asif Ali Zardari, President of Pakistan, he visited China, in the joint statement, again, the same 5 corridors were mentioned. Growth, livelihood, innovation, green, and open. So these 5 corridors were then exactly they are corresponding with the 5 E's that had been repeatedly shared by our different speakers. Specifically, Dr. Khalid, he mentioned in detail, and I loved the slide where he had all these arrows connecting the corridors and the 5 E's of export, equity, energy, environment of the UDAN program launched by Planning Ministry of Pakistan. So all this together sets the priority, sets the pathway. Why? Because CPEC phase 1, when it was initiated in 2013, was mainly handling the infrastructure. By the way, that infrastructure was not to be built by the private sector. The main focus was government sector. The infrastructure projects were there and it had mixed results. I wouldn't say 100% achieved, but a large percentage was achieved in transport sector, SCZs, Gawad, energy sector. Some like 8,000 megawatt power plants were established. So it was a big success in certain sectors and mixed success in other sectors. But where is the economic impact? Now, the economic impact gap was there because it's still there because of mainly the reason identified by most of the speakers and Dr. Khalid, premature deindustrialization in Pakistan. So industrialization was not done. This is where private sector was required to come. So something happened that we were not able to attract the private sector to establish or initiate industrialization, with the result that now thousands of megawatt energy is surplus in Pakistan. Why? Because the demand is not there, because industry is not there. And side by side, digitalization, because we need a lot of energy at very good tariff for digitalization for data centers. So here is the gap. And what did the government do? What are the government plans for filling out this gap? Let me share with you. So the B2B part, the business engagement part, is not primarily or majorly handled by planning ministry, who are focusing on CPEC, but industrial cooperation within CPEC framework is handled by BOI and SIFC. And let me share with you a few facts. Just past 9 months, not even a year, when September 4th, Prime Minister of Pakistan visited Beijing, we signed 149 JV agreements and MOUs. And let me also share with you that around 31% of the projects are today in execution. Somewhere around 40 to 42% are in active stage. Now, just very recently on 24th of May, when Prime Minister of Pakistan visited Hangzhou, another conference was arranged, business, B2B. Another set of 168 MOUs and agreements signed. It's very, very recent, but still, we have 6.8% projects already in execution, and others are being followed up. In between these two major events, we had one agri conference in Islamabad, and we had one home appliances and BESS conference in Lahore, and the results are not bad. Agri conference, very important sector. We had, excuse me if the figure is a little incorrect, but around 54 MOUs and agreements signed, and 71% are now at active stage, not in execution, at active stage. Similarly, BESS and home appliances, since it was a single sector, so sorry, agri had 92 and BESS has 54 MOUs and agreements. So this is the kind of work government is now doing. What are we doing differently this time? We are vigorously following up all this activity. We are also asking now the regulatory obstructions or hurdles or facilitation was mentioned. So we are asking all these companies from China side, from Pakistan side, the JV partners, the MOU partners, what are the obstructions that they are facing? So there are regulatory obstructions, there are non-regulatory obstructions, and we are trying our level best to connect with all the relevant ministries. By the way, the framework is now that every week we hold a meeting of all the line ministries at my level, fortnightly at higher level, and once a month at still a higher level, and once in 2 months at the highest level. So this is the kind of follow-up, this is the kind of identification of problems that we are doing. SCZ under CPEC, the flagship SCZ Karachi Industrial Park is almost about to take off. It's a very, very proud moment for the government to, when they will very shortly announce it. It's in the pipeline, it's about to take off. STZs, a few very very important SDGs are already up and running, and some of the Chinese companies also showing interest in those SDGs and data centers, because data centers are now the base to go for agriculture, for manufacturing, for all other activities. So these are a few things that I wanted to discuss with you. This is the way government is taking the real gist of CPEC 2.0 forward, so that we can fill in the gap and we can then utilize the surplus energy that we have. I once again thank SDPI and management and all the distinguished speakers for being so supportive. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arfa, for discussing what is exactly happening and how we're moving forward. I think we'll just have, with this, we'll come to our special guest today, His Excellency, Mr. Xi, is the DCM at the Embassy of People's Republic of China in Pakistan, for his interventions. And after this, we'll have a very quick round of Qs and comments. So thank you so much, Excellency, for joining us. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Shafkat Kakahel, Excellency, Ambassador Moin Haq, Excellency, Mr. Harun Sharif, my good friend, Excellency Irfa Iqbal, Dr. Khalid Wali, also Dr. Shenwei online in Beijing. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Ni hao. It's a great pleasure to attend the seminar organized by the Sustainable Development Policy Institute. First of all, on behalf of the Chinese Embassy, I'd like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to SDPI for your meticulous preparations for today's event, and to express our sincere appreciation to all sectors and individuals from both countries who have long cared about and supported the development of China-Pakistan relations. I listened to previous remarks carefully. You have very extensive and enlightening opinions, which will be very helpful for our work in the future. I'd like to share with you a few thoughts based on the theme of this seminar. First, this year marks the 5th anniversary of President Xi Jinping's proposal of the Global Development Initiative. In September 2021, President Xi Jinping solemnly put forward the GDI at the 76th sessions of the United Nations General Assembly, calling on the international community to put development high on the global macro policy agenda and work together to steer global development toward a new stage of balanced, coordinated, and inclusive growth. The GDI encompasses 6 key areas: staying committed to development as a priority, to a people-centered approach, to benefits for all, to innovation-driven development, to harmony between man and nature, and to results-oriented actions. 5 years on, the idea of prioritizing development has taken deep roots in people's hearts, and the GDI has received responses and support
from over 100 countries and international organizations, further solidifying global consensus on development. The network of partners based on win-win cooperation continues to expand. More than 80 countries have joined the group of friends of the GDI, and nearly 100 countries, regions, and the international organizations have signed cooperation documents with China under the initiative. The fruits of GDI and the shared developments are becoming increasingly abundant. The GDI has made solid strides in mobilizing resources, building mechanisms, and advancing cooperation, having leveraged over $23 billion in funding to support the revitalization of developing countries in the global south, and launched more than 1,800 cooperation projects that benefit people across numerous nations. As one of the earliest countries to support GDI, Pakistan has not only joined the group of friends of the GDI, but also saw its National Assembly establish the world's first global development initiative group under a parliamentary framework. Leading Pakistani think tanks, including SDPI, and the universities have launched in-depth research and exchanges on GDI and are actively offering proposals on how to integrate the implementation of GDI with practical cooperation between China and Pakistan. This fully demonstrates the high regard and the proactive response from all sectors in Pakistan toward GDI proposed by President Xi Jinping. This year marks the beginning of China's 15th five-year plan. In the first 5 months of this year, China's economy delivered an overall stable performance with a shift toward higher quality and greater efficiency. The total value of goods imports and exports grew by 15.3% year-on-year, while trade with Belt and Road countries rose by 13.6%, demonstrating the continued resilience of China's external circulation. Employment and prices remain stable, and the trend of structural improvement has been firmly established. Looking ahead, China will continue to advance high-level opening up, pursue high-quality development, share development opportunities with countries around the world, and the first and foremost benefit our iron brother Pakistan. This year also marks a pivotal year for the deepening of One Pakistan initiative. The Pakistani side has put forward a well-defined national development as FES. We are delighted to see that under the strong leadership of Pakistani government and guided by 5ES framework, Pakistan's economy has achieved remarkable progress. In fiscal year 2026, Pakistan's GDP grew by 3.7%, reaching a historic high of $445 billion, with its macro economy continuing to stabilize and improve. The service sector and the large-scale manufacturing grew by 4.09% and 6.1% respectively, both hitting 4-year highs, reflecting simultaneous improvements in the quality and the efficiency of economic development. Also, Pakistan's per capita annual income increased to $1,901, up by 8.5% year on year, indicating the fruits of economic growth are tangibly benefiting the people. Ladies and gentlemen, this year marks the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and Pakistan. Since the beginning of this year, high-level exchanges between our two countries have been frequent and close, and strategic communication has continued to deepen. In April, His Excellency President Zhao Dali visited Hunan and Hainan provinces, and in May, Prime Minister Shahbaz paid an official visit to China. During his meeting with Prime Minister Shahbaz, President Xi Jinping emphasized that both sides should solidly advance the action plan to foster an even closer China-Pakistan community with a shared future, coordinate the implementation of major landmark projects and the small and beautiful livelihood projects, and deepen all-around cooperation in agriculture, industry, artificial intelligence, and talent development. Prime Minister Shahbaz stated that Pakistan is willing to deepen Belt and Road cooperation with China and advance the construction of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Guided by the important consensus by our two countries' leaders, we are ready to work with Pakistan to continue implementing the GDI, accelerate the alignment of our development strategies, build an upgraded version of the CPEC 2.0, which features 5 corridors, will serve the modernization drive of both countries and bring greater benefits to our peoples. Focusing on the 5 E's framework, both sides can consolidate and expand cooperation in the following areas. First, continuously expanding exports plays a vital role in stabilizing and developing Pakistan's economy. We hope and support more Chinese enterprises to invest and do business in Pakistan, injecting new momentum into bilateral industrial cooperation and assisting Pakistan to develop its export-oriented industries. China's Haier Group plans to invest $400 million in Pakistan to build a new home appliance industrial park, which will create over 10,000 jobs. The Challenge Textile and Garment Industrial Park has already been constructed, and with an investment of $150 million, expected to create over 20,000 jobs. The Lasakai Special Economic Zone, jointly developed by China, Pakistan, has already seen 27 Chinese and Pakistani enterprises in high-quality tires produced by SLM, a China-Pakistan joint venture, which recently made its IPO in Karachi, are widely welcomed in American market. Outstanding enterprises from both our countries are continuously writing more and more success stories of industrial cooperation. Second, technological cooperation between the two countries is strongly advancing the construction of e-Pakistan. Top Chinese technology companies such as Huawei and Alibaba are helping Pakistan achieve continued developments in artificial intelligence, information technology, e-commerce, and other fields. Also, just now, our speaker mentioned the IBI, Pakistani Digital Economy Headquarters, officially unveiled and launched in Islamabad. The training program for 1,000 agriculture professionals to study in China has been successfully implemented, pooling intellectual and human resources for Pakistan's agricultural development. Pakistani astronauts are now receiving training in China, and one of them is expected to be the first foreign astronauts to work in China's space station. Third, green cooperation between our two countries is in full swing, making great contributions to addressing climate change. More and more Chinese new energy vehicles are now running on the streets of Pakistan. As China-Pakistan Joint Research Center on Earth Sciences and the Pakistani remote sensing satellites launched with Chinese assistance have greatly enhanced Pakistan's technology capabilities in climate change monitoring and addressing. The Suki Kinari hydropower project, colored hydropower plant, and the vast arrays of wind turbines and solar panels have contributed a total of 5,000 megawatts of clean electricity to Pakistan. They are not only a source of power delivering lights, but also models for green technology. Fourth, energy cooperation between our two countries have yielded fruitful results, constantly consolidating the foundation of energy security. Energy investment under CPEC have exceeded $20 billion, providing Pakistan with over 8,000 megawatts electricity. This has greatly alleviated domestic energy shortages, promoted Pakistan's economic and social development, and laid a solid foundation for national industrial transformation. Clean and renewable energy projects hold a significant place in this regard, helping Pakistan effectively cope with energy supply challenges arising from recent regional turbulence. Fifth, livelihood projects are being continuously implemented, profoundly embodying the ideal of equity in the 5 years. We remain committed that China-Pakistan cooperation covers all regions of Pakistan, that outcomes benefits all Pakistani people. Over the past 2 years, we have distributed 70,000 health kits to students in Balochistan, benefiting 766 schools in 23 districts. The GDI Pak China Friendship Hospital, built with Chinese aid, sees an average over 1,000 patients daily for treatment and free diagnosis. We will also implement small and beautiful livelihood projects, including the 100,000, 10,000 plan, which refers to building 100 water stations, upgrading 1,000 classrooms, and distributing 100,000 school supply kits in Balochistan, ensuring that people across the region can benefit from China-Pakistan cooperation. Distinguished guests, friends, standing at a new historic starting point, we are ready to work with Pakistan to uphold high-level mutual trust and mutual support as builders of China-Pakistan community with a shared future. Focus on development and win-win cooperation as fellow travelers on the path to modernization, and remain people-centered and prioritize people's livelihoods as practitioners in enhancing the well-being of our two peoples. In short, we are ready to join hands with Pakistan to accelerate the building of an even closer China-Pakistan community with a shared future in the new era. Set an example for building a community with a shared future with neighboring countries, and contribute to building a community with a shared future for humanity. Last, I wish this seminar a full success. Chimpa Dosti Jindaba. Thank you. Shukriya.
Yes, thank you so much, Excellency, and long live to Pak-China friendship. And I think this brings us to the closing of first plenary, and fully apologize for the delay, fully understand that you all have time. So with this, let me request all of our distinguished speakers to please join us on the stage. Excellency, if you could please join us on the stage for a quick group photo, please. Dr. Arfa, Ambassador Shafkat Kakakhil, His Excellency Mr. Shi, Moinul Haq Saab, I think Harun Sharif Saab has left, Dr. Khalid. And if I can also request a team from Embassy of China to please join us on the stage for a group photo. Yes, Dr. Hassan. Dr. Hassan is here. Dr. Hassan, yes, please. And Salim, if you could please, Salim, if you could request the team from, and do we have Juyang here? Juyang, if you could please join us here. Yes, Zishan Saab, please, if you could join us for a quick group photo. Yeah. Miss Musarat, do we have Miss Musarat? Okay, Miss Musarat, if you could please join us here for a quick group photo, please. Thank you. Sir, please. Yes, thank you, everyone. And with this, let us move towards the first roundtable discussion that we have, that is on the new emerging economic cooperation model between Pakistan and China. And the session will be moderated by Ms. Zainab Babar. Zainab is working as a researcher at Sustainable Development Policy Institute. And let me very briefly introduce you to the speakers we have for today. We're very pleased to have with us Ms. Musarat Jabin. Ms. Musarat is currently the Executive Director at Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. We do have Mr. Zishan Malik. Mr. Zishan Saab is the head of China coverage at Habib Bank Limited. We have Mr. Tom Baxter. Tom is the project manager, Global China and Learning at the Dialogue Earth. We have Dr. Christoph Nedopil Wang, again, the lead of Pacific Industry Transition Professor at the University of Queensland. We have Mr. Shakil Ahmed Rame. He's the Chief Executive Officer at Asia Institute of Eco-Civilization Research and Development. Dr. Hassan Daud Bird. He's the advisor at Energy China Operation Limited. So with this, I'll hand it over to Zainab. And I'll request the speakers to please, and I'll also request the STPI team to have the speakers at the front. And in this session, after the initial interventions from the speakers, we'll go towards a round of discussion and consultations from the participants as well. And Ali, if you could just replace the name tags as well. Zainab, if you could just start with your scene setting while we get the people seated there. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this roundtable discussion on Pak-China cooperation, economic cooperation for low carbon development. So to begin the discussion, if we talk about Pakistan's economy, the two main features of the economy are the consumption-led growth and the import dependence. What happens actually is that these two features kind of bring in the economic stabilization, but that's short term. For long term, what we need to focus is on that how we can build an economy that is not only stable, but productive, resilient, and sustainable. Because if we think about future and in the long run, stability alone cannot proven fruitful for the economy. If we look at the traditional economic models, we have seen that this economic stabilization, short-term stabilization, have kind of led us to vulnerabilities, economic vulnerabilities. So the question rises that how we can build an economy, what would be the pillars of this sustainable economy? The pillars could be the productive investment, export-led growth, green industrialization, climate resilience, and regional interconnectivity. Talking about these pillars, there comes the Pak-China cooperation into focus, because we know that as as China-Pakistan both are entering into the CPEC's next phase, the focus is on green industrialization, green growth, and sustainable development. So we know that Pakistan and China both are aligned on these pillars. Next slide, please. I'll share a brief presentation of the numbers around. Other speakers in the previous session have discussed the deindustrialization. If we look at this number, the 46% decline in private investments in the manufacturing sector, that's a huge number, and that have basically taken place in past 5 years. So we need to dig deeper that what are the issues due to which the investments in the industrialization are declining. Because if industry is not growing, you cannot have export-led growth of the economy. You cannot create jobs for the people, and you cannot diversify the overall economy. So it's important to focus on the industrialization. There are a number of challenges that are linked to that. For this, the economy needs to, implement some structural reforms. These are kind of the challenges that we have currently being faced. Similarly, if we see on the other side of the picture, we have some opportunities as well, specifically talking about the Pakistan-China cooperation. We know that China has been a strong friend of Pakistan from so many years. Economic cooperation has evolved from infrastructure to trade, industrial cooperation, green investment, and financial integration. Under this economic cooperation, CPEC serves as the flagship platform under the BRI, supporting Pakistan's long-term economic transformation. As everybody have discussed, that the next phase focuses on sustainable financing, clean energy, digital connectivity, and industrial modernization. So one thing that is clear from the whole scenario is the traditional economic models are not working by focusing solely on the short-term economic stabilization. What needs to be focused on is the long-term economic stabilization. Next, please. I think I'm not going to go into details of this slide because Dr. Khalid have already linked these points that there is a strong alignment of Pakistan's 5E framework with China's GDI. So next, please. We have also discussed this in detail that the CPEC 1.0 focused primarily on the development of infrastructure, the development of power plants and ports. And this kind of focus has now shifted towards green industrialization, green growth, development of green SEZs, and sustainable development. Next, please. when we talk about transformation, industrial transformation, green transformation, or sustainable development, one thing that comes into mind is, okay, this transformation is needed, but from where the finance is going to come? So at this point, one possible avenue of sustainable finance that we have recently observed that Pakistan did well is in the issuance of panda bonds. Last month in May, Pakistan successfully issued the panda bonds, and the issuance here is not the important point, but the important point is the response that we have received in the Chinese domestic capital market. We know that these bonds were kind of 5% oversubscribed. Initially, the plan was to issue 1.7 billion yuan of panda bonds, but they were oversubscribed to around 8.8 billion RMB, which is kind of a great success for Pakistan, because this number kind of shows the investor confidence that they have. Also, one thing to note here is that we have received a very good rate, coupon rate of 2.5%. So that also kinds of not only shows the success of this issuance, but also kinds of paves the path for the long-term economic or financial cooperation, not only into panda bonds, but other financial instruments, like Dr. Khalid mentioned in his slides, that we have coal to clean credit initiative. That could be a kind of financing in avenue for retirement of power plants, coal power plants. Other like debt swaps. This is also a possible avenue where this financial cooperation can come into play. Next, please. So one thing that we're very sure at this point is it's not that our visions are not aligned. We know that Pakistan, China, the vision for long-term growth are all aligned. But one thing that we need to understand and discuss and kind of develop an implementation plan, that how we're kind of going to move from this vision of shared prosperity, of common vision, to implement this. With this, I will move towards the roundtable discussion. Our first expert with us today is Dr. Ms. Musarrat Jabin. She is the Executive Director at SECP. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. We know that SECP have taken several reform measures to promote sustainability in the capital market. How do you view the progress made so far, and what should be the next priority under SECP's sustainability reform agenda? Over to you.
Assalamu alaikum, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And of course, thank you very much to STPI for holding this session today, and of course, giving this opportunity for being as a speaker here. So as rightly mentioned in your opening remarks, I mean, we spoke about the panda bond, we spoke about green transition, we spoke about green capital markets as well, with the launch of, the panda bond in the Chinese domestic market. As a regulator, I would like to first give you, generally an overview, in terms of our sustainability reform agenda. So as most of the people perhaps would or must have been following also the reforms in the Pakistani markets, the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan basically has come a long way in terms of its sustainability agenda, which we started in 2021 with the launch of more of, I would say, a regulatory roadmap, an ESG regulatory roadmap. That regulatory roadmap, in fact, highlighted 5 key focus areas. So if I have to just name them, I mean, advocacy, capacity building, having a regulatory framework in place for data disclosures, a centralized online data portal, and of course, the impact assessment, which is yet to follow. And a number of reforms, obviously, and number of initiatives under this reform agenda has been, undertaken by the SECP in close coordination with the stakeholders. And why I emphasize this close coordination with the stakeholders, I will be briefing you on this as well. So, I mean, we had held a number of advocacy and capacity building session in close coordination with the stakeholders. We organized sessions in Lahore, in Karachi, in Islamabad. We had been collaborating with ICAP, with Pakistan Stock Exchange, with the IFC, also under the IFC ESG program. You would also know that we then notified the ESG disclosure guidelines in 2024, and that was the time at which ISSB had also made public IFRS S1 and S2 basically for consultation purposes in order to avoid, that complexity, the confusion itself. So we thought that, we will come up with these guiding principles for the capital market, primarily for the listed companies. And we also very consciously actually made amendments to the Code of Corporate Governance that is applicable to the listed companies, because we have around 500 plus listed companies. And, our view is that, the board of directors must have that fiduciary responsibility. And, actually we mandated the board of directors of these listed companies to oversee the sustainability portfolio and to also have dedicated board committees, preferably led by female directors. So that was a very conscious step in terms of, making the board of directors responsible for, the sustainability portfolio as such. We then in 2024, end of 2024, actually, we had made our ESG sustain portal. We launched it, in fact, and there was a formal launch. The finance minister launched this portal primarily for data-driven decision making and also for companies to highlight their success stories. So that was part of the SECP overall regulatory agenda, sustainability agenda, to have a digital platform for data disclosures. Then we also, further actually very recently, not very recently, but, last year, we had some more work on the IFRS S1 and S2 disclosures that we made, mandatory, but in a phased manner. Nothing came in overnight, everything was just put in place, over a period of time so that, sorry for that, G. So that, the corporate sector had enough time to, absorb the changes, the requirements. So the IFRS S1 and S2 has been made mandatory under certain, benchmarks that the SECP had advised for the listed companies. So certain companies which fall, within that benchmarks were supposed to, start their disclosures in year one. Starting 25 and the others starting 26 and then 27 onwards. The reporting is yet to come in, and inshallah ta'ala we'll see the results by that time as well. What we did also is that now very recently amended those ESG disclosure guidelines, basically to align them with the Pakistan Green Taxonomy document and also with our nationally determined contribution, the NDCs. And the purpose was also to make sure that our corporate reporting was more aligned in terms of its climate disclosure with the NDCs. So that has been done recently, and we also have in place a sustainable finance advisory group that comprises of capital market experts and also development partners like IFC, ADB, etc. And the purpose is that, our, agenda or the vision should be more collaborative and inclusive. And, that's so that we are aligned with our national priorities and I would say also the international standards. So building on these foundations, what we saw is that you also mentioned about the Panda bond, but before that, last year in 2025, we also witnessed the Pakistan's, the green sukuk, the sovereign green sukuk, followed by the Pakistan Green Action Bond as well, which is a private placed bond initially and then later listed on Pakistan Stock Exchange. So if I have to just, consolidate all of these thoughts, building on all of these foundations as such, our next priority area is basically to support sustainability linked financial products, to encourage issuance of green bonds, because we had already introduced the green bond guidelines in 2021 and then also the gender bond guidelines in 2023. So this is to facilitate more, issuance of sustainability linked financial instruments. So we're also working, as part of our future agenda with the Pakistan Stock Exchange to come up with an ESG index, a sustainability index for, the corporate sector, so that both the local as well as, your foreign investors have some benchmark, some credible benchmarks to assess the performance of the companies. Also, what we are doing is on a continuous basis, alongside Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance, with this PICG, and I sit on their board as a director as well. We are continuously reviewing those, capacity building training programs and the ESG training modules. Also, last but not least, I would say we are working very closely with ICAP to have, sector-specific ESG pathways. So say, for example, for the fertilizer sector, for the cement sector, for, the export-oriented sector primarily. So we are working on those sector-specific pathways as well. But the ultimate goal, I think, the participants would realize and appreciate is that what we intend also as a regulator is that companies with strong ESG performance have better access to capital at lower financing cost, and their investors should also be happy that their capital is being deployed towards long-term value creation. So I would say that in short, that ESG disclosures, to me at least, are more of a, I would say, the gateways to increasing the finances to the stock to the corporate sector, and become a source of funding for them for their export oriented for in particular for the export oriented sectors as well. And I'll just stop it here maybe and give chance to the other participants and then come back to on this again, Ji.
Thank you so much, Ms. Masarat. Really glad to know that SECP is introducing such initiatives and sort of working on this regulatory front. I have just one follow-up question related to what you have mentioned, that what is the primary challenge you face when you're kind of introducing these regulatory reforms and kind of making these initiatives work?
So that's, of course, something which is very close to our hearts as well. When I mentioned that we came up with the ESG disclosure, a roadmap in 2022, primarily the purpose was that, that the SECP actually very consciously actually decided that we are going to have a phased approach, and we will be, moving from more of a voluntary towards a mandatory approach in terms of data disclosures. But if you ask me, I mean, voluntary necessarily does not mean that, the corporate sector does not report. It actually means that, they transition in terms of full disclosures over a period of time. And of course, it has its own challenges. One is the readiness of the companies, especially I would say companies in the high impact sector, where the reporting requirements are much more complex and the data availability is limited. I mean, that's a really big challenge. Also, with regards to aligning our local ESG practices and standards is concerned, I would say that, the effective implementation with respect to disclosure against IFRS S1 and S2, that's a major challenge as well. And many companies, I mean, I think if there are companies represented here would also echo the same feeling that, they do not have necessarily, dedicated sustainability teams. So they do not have that knowledge and the capacity to say, report carbon emissions and, to measure carbon emissions to or water footprints, etc. So I think these are common kind of issues that all of the majority of the companies face. And also I think a lot of companies are still struggling with to collect reliable and verifiable data. So the data availability itself is also a tough one, and then also to make sense of the data and then come up with a policy framework for the regulator, that's also a challenge. And I think one of the most important ones also includes the real, the capacity building of the board of directors and management. And here I'm not emphasizing on, the reporting. I'll repeat, I'm not emphasizing on reporting, but it is actually, embedding sustainability into their, decision making, into their strategy and into their oversight, at the board level. That's extremely important. And I think not necessarily relevant to the climate side, but an important challenge is again building a kind of a sustainable data ecosystem for the social indicators like gender. So while the SECP has issued a lot of circulars and notifications requiring the public companies to disclose data, gender disaggregated data, and also we have made it mandatory for the listed companies to report gender pay gap data in their annual reports. This still is the effective implementation, the compliance is still a major challenge. And also, just to overall conclude, I mean, regulatory, incentives and regulatory initiatives are definitely not enough if they're not really a buy-in from the corporate sector. So I think, the corporate sector needs to just, find that business case itself, and they need to ponder on these, on the sustainability as a reform agenda as well. And so, I mean, I think if I have to just, conclude very briefly with it's important for companies to, as such, consider ESG, sustainability, gender, green financing, all of these buzzwords as more of, not as a compliance burden, but more of a strategic opportunity. And this is how they can actually improve their risk management to, they can enhance investor confidence and perhaps also attract sustainability linked capital. So, this is absolutely important. So, because as I said earlier, these buzzwords need to now translate into the real, long-term value creation, which comes from the, the regulated sector, the corporate sector as such.
Thank you so much, Ms. Masarat, for a detailed answer. You were rightly said that for these policies to be implemented, there is buy-in needed from the private sector. Now I will come towards our next expert, Mr. Zishan Malik. He's the head China coverage, Habib Bank Limited. Zishan sir, you have been listening to the experts. Everybody have mentioned that the first phase of CPEC was largely driven by the sovereign grantees and the state-backed financing. As Pakistan shifts towards the 5E framework, which emphasizes the private sector partnerships, Chinese investors remain cautious due to the macroeconomic and the currency risks. In this situation, what financial instruments, credit enhancement mechanisms, and risk-sharing facilities should Pakistan's banking sector develop to kind of de-risk these private investments and accelerate the direct B2B investments in the green domain?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting and STPI. And I think this is very important that we should address all these concerns. When you look at the overall situation, as it is rightly mentioned by all the speakers, and I love hearing most of the comments from everyone, G2G was a part of CPEC phase 1, as rightly said. And it was primarily financed by the Chinese government and the Chinese government organizations and banks to most of the extent. And it was primarily for infrastructure and for power generation and other projects. Now, post that, as it was said by Dr. Khalid in the beginning, that it was a hardware that was created under CPEC phase 1, and then comes a software, CPEC phase 2.0, where most of the business entities would normally, in our language, we call them Chinese private-owned enterprises that started coming to Pakistan. Well, when you talk about de-risking of these Chinese private-owned entities, there are multiple challenges. And in HBL, we have this China coverage department since 2013, and we are lucky enough to grab that initial chunk that coming to Pakistan. Under the framework of CPEC phase 1, we dealt with all those SOEs, state-owned organizations working on power generation projects, working on infrastructure projects, and obviously working on other projects that are important for public sector development. Now, they have paved the way for the other businesses to take into place where this industrialization need to happen. But unfortunately, the pace of industrialization was not that was anticipated. And there are multiple challenges. When you talk about de-risking, now in de-risking, out of the context, I just want to share one thing that in 2022 or 2023, one circular was one order was actually issued by US government, and that was to put sanctions on foreign financial institutions. Now, what does it say? That, they can sanction different Chinese institutions to be dealt with Pakistani institutions. That made all the Chinese entities working in Pakistan principally high risk, where we have to do enhanced due diligence, where we have to do unwrapping that will take us to their ultimate beneficial owner, and that ultimately increase turnaround time. So when you talk about de-risking at the bank level, you have to have all those AML, CFT frameworks, and as Madam just said, that IFRS 1 and IFRS 2 are also coming our way. So these are the things that principally, I would not say hamper the de-risking process, but I will say that slow down the de-risking process. Coming up with the same challenges, there are certain products that we actively pursue, and being the only bank who has commercial branches in China, what we come across with obviously the RMB settlement. Now that RMB settlement, as also bring in the beginning, that this is one of the tools that is being practiced to avoid that currency deval, where the investors can feel comfortable getting their funds into Pakistan in the currency of their choice. And then they can also remit back their earnings, their dividends, and their loans if they have taken up from China for the project. So I think this is the first initiative that has been taken into impact. Second facility that obviously these private-owned entities do not hold bigger collateral in Pakistan to facilitate their financing opportunity or to avail financing from Pakistan. So what we have started giving them an option that, for example, if you are a Chinese entity dealing with Chinese financial institution, why don't you come up with SBLC arrangement that you give us standby letter of credit from the bank of your choice from China, and we, being a leading commercial bank in Pakistan, can take exposure on that FI and facilitate with you with the PKR financing. One, it will hedge your foreign currency exposure. Two, it will give you access to liquidity that you need in Pakistan. And three, you get facilitated where you want to operate. At the same time, if, for example, that is an export-oriented entity that Dr. Arfa said that these SEZs are a kind of success. 4 SEZs are working properly, 2 in Faisalabad and obviously 1 in Gwadar, but Gwadar is at a very slow pace. But these export-oriented entities, if they are working there, so they can utilize that RMB financing backed by SBLC as a pre-shipment or post-shipment finance. So this is one of the measures that has been given to them. Coming to the second option that you said, Panda Bond. Now, Panda Bond, fortunately, again, HBL is one of the advisor of onshore advisor for Panda Bond. The efforts are going on since long, and fortunately, it was concluded in May with the first tranche that was oversubscribed. Ultimate goal is $1 billion, but right now we have concluded $250 million. That is equivalent to 1.75 billion RMB. But obviously, it depends on the sustainability projects pertaining to water governance, energy efficiency, and social infrastructure projects. So I think that stage yet to be seen, that once this utilization will come into force, and then obviously we'll go for second tranche, third tranche, and obviously then till the completion of that $1 billion mark that we are looking at. So there are multiple financial models that are being created. And now with JVs in place, there are certain entities that are looking at the local financing facilities. So they are also being accommodated, especially when we have, you can say, a waterfall mechanism in place. They are importing, adding value, and then exporting. So this mechanism, a self-liquidating model, is also being offered to the Chinese entities so that they can work on this model. One such example that will, I think, clarify a lot of question. We have, I think, clauses and we have rules regarding toll manufacturing, but we have offered this to one of our clients in Gwadar, where they are importing raw ingots and other irons, and they are melting, and then they are exporting it back to China. So what we are doing, we rather than importing the whole equipment or waste material and then exporting to the whole amount, so we are giving them an opportunity where they can charge a service fee. So this model has been implemented so that we cannot, artificially create that current account deficit or surplus by doing that import and export to the whole amount. So there are multiple initiatives that are being carried out, and I think these Chinese entities now, they are being locally climatized to lot of tools available. Initially, yes, they see a lot of difference in Chinese banking system. That is principally less on collateral or limited collateral with more documentation. In Pakistan, where our model is collateralized, our model is more toward the due diligence based on the documentation availability. So this transition has taken a while, but I think that now we can see that more and more companies are not coming with those basic questions. Now they understand how this model works. So I think this might have clarified the things that you have asked.
Yes, exactly. This is really really grateful to listen about the initiatives, the de-risking initiatives that HPL has introduced. One follow-up question that I have that comes to my mind is you mentioned about SPLC. Are there any clients that are currently using this mechanism? But because that sounds quite interesting.
Yeah, there are many actually. And because present in 10 other countries, so it's not only an SPLC coming from China. So few multinational private-owned entities of Chinese origin, if they have operations in Singapore, in UAE, Bahrain, or any other country where we have common footprint. So we are also getting standby letter of credits from those countries that will serve as a security for local financing. So we have multiple examples, and obviously there are certain caps and procedures and manuals in place from Central Bank of Pakistan. So after getting relevant approvals, we have already deployed these facilities for multiple clients.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing these detailed mechanisms with us. Next, we have Mr. Tom Baxter. He's the project manager at Global China and Learning, Dialogue Earth. Thank you so much, Tom, for joining us. And apologies for the delay. Yeah, so I would like to know from you that as developing countries navigate the economic trade-offs of partnering on the energy transition, what specific investment frameworks or the joint venture structures based patterns are being observed in the Southeast Asia and Africa that have kind of proven most successful in the host countries and that can kind of support Pakistan in this overall energy and economic cooperation? With this, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak with colleagues from SDPI and other colleagues, and I've already learned a lot from all the contributions so far. Thanks for the question. It's an interesting one. I think I'm coming at this from someone who has focused on China's relations with the global South more broadly, as in not specifically on Pakistan, for quite a few years. I think the best way I can contribute to this is actually, if you don't mind, focusing on Africa, because the majority of my work over the last 3 or 4 years has been on the China-Africa relationship, and that's where I focus my research. That's where I've been most on the ground, actually seeing what things are like and speaking to policymakers. So I'll focus a bit on these sorts of issues in the China-Africa relationship. I think the first thing to say is no country in Africa has as comprehensive or as granular a sort of plan for or a blueprint for their relationships with China as Pakistan does. There is the FOCAC, the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, which has been running for many years, and next year will hold its 10th forum. But this is very top level. This is a China plus all African countries, and although the documents that come out of that cover many areas, they are kind of hamstrung by the fact that it's such high level. They can't get into these granular details. That said, I think with a number of African countries, there are certain sort of overlaps with Pakistan's situation. People were mentioning earlier issues of premature deindustrialization. That's certainly the case in a lot of African countries. And people were also mentioning issues of, particularly in CPEC 1.0, there being a lot of state-led investment, but a difficulty in crowding in the private investment around that, which would create those kind of spillover effects into different industries. Those are familiar questions in many African countries. So to approach the question, I thought maybe I could just offer some thoughts on what I see as kind of 3 main ways in which African countries, African businesses are engaging with Chinese investment and Chinese green tech in particular. obviously Africa is a whole continent and countries are in very different economic, political situations. So I'm kind of breaking down by a few different major countries and different regions and their approaches. The first kind of group of countries and their policies I'd look at is the countries that have an existing kind of deeper industrial base. So I'm thinking in places like South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, and to some extent Ethiopia. And these countries have tended to, over the last decade or more, work with Chinese state-owned companies on SEZs, and have also had the ability to attract Chinese investment in production and manufacturing that can then feed into their industrial ecosystems. So one country I've been looking at quite a bit recently is Morocco, which is possibly Africa's most industrialized country. It has a long history of working with European companies, particularly auto companies, and it has that manufacturing industrial ecosystem existing. What's been happening recently is we've seen a lot of Chinese companies from the green tech sectors moving into Morocco with very, very big investments, billion-dollar investments to set up things like battery manufacturing plants and solar manufacturing too. What they see from that is two things: an ability to access the European market by selling batteries directly into Europe, but also by selling to those European automobile manufacturers who have their operations in Morocco. Morocco's also seen a bit of a shift, I guess somewhat like what some of the panelists have described about CPEC, where 10 years ago there was a lot of sort of government to government MOUs and Chinese state-owned companies setting up things like industrial parks. Now increasingly what we're seeing is Chinese private companies making these investments and seeing the solid business case to go into Morocco. So this is, in many ways, this is driven by like a concerted industrial development policy from Morocco, where one, they're trying to develop a full, what they call an integrated industrial ecosystem, and two, where they're very much leveraging the connections that they have with China and then with the European market and existing European investors. And there's a lot of linkages there between Chinese investors and European investors. There is kind of political tension around that. I mean, within the EU, there's a lot of scrutiny on that right now. But the fact on the ground is that there's a lot of very close interaction between Chinese and European investment. So that's sort of one picture. And I'll try and be a bit briefer on the other two. The second picture is with resource-rich countries, and here I'm particularly thinking about countries that have different critical minerals, such as cobalt, such as copper, such as lithium. And there we've seen various sort of manifestations of this these export ban policies in order to try and onshore processing capacity. Some of that has been in the form of bans and quotas for exports, as in the case of DRC. Some of it has been this kind of long-term planning of incremental bans. So Zimbabwe is a classic case study where in 2022, they banned the export of raw, unprocessed lithium. As a result, a couple of the Chinese companies operating there introduced lithium concentrators, invest in lithium concentrators. And Zimbabwe recently announced that next year it will then ban the export of lithium concentrates until they have further production, further value add. So that's what we're seeing on the side of resource-rich countries. Again, there's sort of different takes on this from different governments. But lastly, I wanted to look at countries where we see more of a role of the private sector, both from the African side and the Chinese side. And I guess you could say these are countries where Chinese companies see potential markets for their products. The one I'm most familiar with is Kenya, where I've done research, but also you could look at Rwanda, Uganda, and some other countries. In Kenya, there's a number of local e-mobility, EV startups. Some of them are working on two-wheeled vehicles, three-wheeled vehicles. Some of them are working on buses. And for all of them, their essential model is that they are working with suppliers of batteries and equipment in China. They're assembling locally, which is partly driven by Kenyan government laws about local content requirement and local assembly. But within this partnership, these companies are engaging and pushing quite strongly for knowledge and technology transfer. From what I've seen, on the knowledge transfer side, there's quite a bit going on. So engineers from these Kenyan companies will go on regular trips to China, and Chinese engineers will come to Kenya, and there will be those discussions and trading of feedback on products. One company in Kenya has even been trained by CATL as official battery maintenance partners. So that involves their engineers going actually to CATL Europe and receiving that training and becoming officially certified. So that's a clear example of a kind of knowledge transfer. On tech transfer, I think there's an argument that if you're assembling from semi-knockdown kits locally, you learn a certain amount about how these vehicles are put together. But what we heard, me and my colleagues heard when we visited a few months ago, is that there seems to be a bit of a limit to how far companies can push for tech transfer when it comes to battery technologies and so on, which I think is going to be a key sort of a bit of a push and pull point between these companies and indeed the governments who want to see this tech transfer. So I'll leave it at that. I hope that wasn't too long, and I hope that is insightful for the Pakistan scenario. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Baxter. That really insightful to hear or listen about these country cases. And one strong alignment that I personally see is the Morocco's case, because Pakistan is also looking into the localization of battery manufacturing and solar manufacturing. So thank you so much for sharing these insightful interventions. With this, we'll move toward the next expert. That is Dr. Christophe Niederbelbank. He's the lead of Asia Pacific Industry Transition and working as a professor at University of Queensland. Firstly, thank you so much, Dr. Christophe, for joining us online.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly. Thanks. So that given the recent record high levels of energy-related engagements under the BRI and the fact that GDI has mobilized over $23 billion in development financing globally, how emerging economies with high sovereign debt like Pakistan burdens this structure now, and how the infrastructure investments can be kind of attracted through the Chinese green capital without violating the sustainability disclosures or sustainability guidelines. Over to you.
Thank you so much. First of all, please allow me to also congratulate STPI for organizing this excellent conference. Even though I must say the opening remarks immediately highlighted how the big nations, including my birth country, Germany, lost in the World Cup today. So that's a good start for a conference to give me a smile on my face at least, or not. I also want to really praise the insight shared by the distinguished speakers who preceded me, both in the high-level forum and of course now here with friends like Tom, but also here on the ground. Really the excellent speeches and remarks have really set a brilliant tone. And I think, but it also reminds us that speech often is cheap. The implementation is what really matters. And we should always remember that. I think, I mean, the questions and the remarks that that you raised and that the others have raised, and looking at kind of what's possible, I want to kind of almost take a step back, if I may, because I think what's missing, or kind of what I thought about when listening to this, is I think three things that we need to move to move forward, also kind of to attract finance, and you say kind of without burdening with sovereign debt. And I think that's pretty clear. I think the three pillars that kind of we need to keep in mind is compatibility, competitiveness, and enabling environment. And I want to quickly highlight kind of what I mean with that. So first, let us examine compatibility. It's a question: what are the true economic opportunities for Pakistan at this time in this world? What are the developing in new products and markets that spark interests from international partners, and particularly, of course, China? What is kind of what Pakistan can produce or provide as a service, what a global market or even regional markets urgently need? And I think, of course, in the industrial sector, that means a lot more than just installing power generation capacity. It's an enabling factor, but it's, of course, not what others need. It's what Pakistan needs. Does it lie in kind of utility scale battery storage, expanding green manufacturing, launching clean technology recycling ecosystems? I think, of course, clean energy intermittencies, we have them all around the world. And so utility scale battery infrastructure, great immediate avenue for joint ventures, also with China, of course. Yet I think that's where the compatibility meets a little bit the competitiveness. So it is a compatible product, but so many countries are looking at this opportunity right now. So identifying what is the specific Pakistan competitive advantage is extremely important. So alternatively, and I think something that also a lot of countries are looking at, but I think where Pakistan has probably an even stronger competitive advantage, is establishing localized circular economy frameworks, for example, for battery and solar hardware, that creates a sustainable industrial loop where you can have certified low carbon inputs for new battery or solar manufacturing. So if for example, the carbon emissions have already been accounted in the original production of solar equipment, including the critical minerals, these are already kind of spent carbon budgets. The recycling, in many regards, provides a green input. So this protects our environment while building the exact export capacity envisioned by the 5 E's. So that's compatibility. Second, competitiveness. In a global economy, obviously we have constrained capital, and being competitive means being better than other nations. So I think very, very clearly, what's the value proposition that makes international investors, including Chinese or others, choose Pakistan over alternative destinations? And I was really pleased, first of all, I think it's interesting to hear also from the ambassador how the Chinese view the support structure and the opportunities in Pakistan. But it's also interesting that the China Belt and Road Initiative investment report, which I've been writing for the last 6 years and kind of for 7 years and doing the data research for that, that China green energy investment indeed climbed to record levels, as you just said, $18.3 billion. But CPEC engagement, so China's engagement in Pakistan, actually continued to drop. Now, that's an important, so we have to reverse this and outcompete other markets. So other markets have received a lot more funding over the last years from China. Pakistan must diversify. And one of the barriers that Pakistan continues to face is a very expensive electricity system. So based on coal-fired power plants. So a key frontier is to manage to phase out and early retirement of older, actually they're not so old, even kind of the younger, high carbon coal assets that are driving up electricity prices. So structuring managed transition vehicles, and I'm happy kind of that this has come up a couple of times already in this seminar. We can combine Chinese green capital, international concessional finance to fund the early phase down of coal plants. And then, of course, you also kind of mentioned this call to carbon credits. That's, I think, an important avenue to raise further funds, but it is not necessary in order to phase down coal plants. I think there are other ways, and I think there are hopefully more opportunities to discuss this. I think also kind of competitive means we cannot rely on bilateral channels alone. co-financing is important. Building a domestic capital market, and I heard this before too, is extremely important. It's not just relying on international finance. What is the domestic finance landscape in order to raise also for large project finance and to understand non-recursive finance? You mentioned also the Panda bond launch, and I really kind of want to kind of applaud Pakistan for doing this, and it's been a great collaboration with the AIB, but this must just be the beginning. This model of the Panda bond is not replicable, and it's based on a high guarantee from AIB, and so, but it is nevertheless a great step into raising renminbi that kind of allows Pakistan also to kind of import potentially without losing any other foreign currency import from China. Third, none of this matters without a strong enabling environment built on common standards, policy stability, and a clear long-term direction. So obviously, investors do not just look at project economics, they look at kind of what is the longer-term durability of the policy and regulatory harmony. And I think there actually, Pakistan just has to look domestically. There are some good examples where kind of this policy environment has actually shaped a real revolution. The recent solar boom in Pakistan. Now, I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but let this be known, this has been watched globally. And there is a lot of admiration how Pakistan has done it and trying to understand kind of how this was possible. Now, I think it worked because it was market driven. It was powered by private economics, high electricity prices, minimal policy intervention, and very little bureaucratic friction to large extent. The economic fundamentals were clear. And this is, I think, a lesson. The market will deploy capital rapidly if this is the case. I have a lot more points. I think I want to raise one more point. I think what's interesting for China, Pakistan, the PBOC, the central bank, just upgraded the cross-border renminbi swap lines and its new repo facilities, and it could allow actually countries like Pakistan and other emerging countries to settle trade and finance critical low-carbon technology directly with kind of the renminbi. And so I think that's can preserve, if applied correctly, scarce foreign exchange reserves. And yeah, also really want to applaud what the central bank and the financial regulators have been doing in Pakistan over the years. Really great progress. And I'm also really pleased kind of what the colleague just discussed about the IFRS reporting and kind of the phase in of this. Finally, kind of, we must not view Chinese financial capital and kind of obviously world-class technology as a bilateral engagement opportunity. It is much more kind of how can we use this Chinese finance and technology to uplift Pakistan's overall economy in collaboration with the world. Never become kind of dependent on one. I'm living in Australia. I can tell you we're very, very dependent on China. For the good or bad, they've been a great market to export our resources, but it's also a very high dependency. So kind of how can Pakistan use this technology, the financing that has been available for a much broader competitiveness push. So integrating the industries and becoming, again, more competitive, more compatible, and having the environment. Now, I will leave it at this, but I really, again, congratulations for bringing everybody together. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Christoph, for sharing insightful interventions. And you've rightly mentioned that policy stability is the key to attract any investments, be it national or international, especially Chinese investments. With this, I'll move towards our next panelist for today. That is Mr. Shakil Rame. He is the CEO of Asian Institute of Eco-Civilization Research and Development. Thank you so much, Shakil sir, for joining us today. I would like to know that we've seen that development partnerships are increasingly measured by policy outcomes rather than infrastructure delivery alone. What policy reforms should Pakistan prioritize to ensure that cooperation under the GDI and CPEC 2.0 drive systematic economic transformation rather than remaining project-centric? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, STPI, for inviting me. I think that is the most important question So what type of the reforms we need to pursue? But before going that, I just want to mention one thing. We also need to understand the spirit of these initiatives, including Global Development Initiative. We need to be very careful when analyzing, because these are initiatives by China. They are highly integrated. These are not standalone initiatives like BRI, GSI, GCI, GGI, and they contribute towards a grand vision of the community with a shared future. So we must be very clear. So what we want to get. If we are talking today GDI, that is not a standalone. It has a roots with other initiatives. And that's why if we look at the institutional arrangements, they are multi-layered and they are stationed at the different institutions like SIDCA, like there are some programs under the BRI, then the Chinese entities, then UN, the number of things. So before reforming, we must know what we are dealing with. So that is an important question. And second thing, whatever reform or whatever policy or the policy intervention we are planning, that must be in accordance with the ground realities, not just for the theoretical, ideological, or to show the something like that we are the best boys in that field. Like we are practicing, we practice in the term of the WTO, World Trade Organization. We went there and we signed the agreements with the reading. Either we have to provide the subsidies to the farmer or not. We just signed the agreement and came back. And then we claim we are the best, we are not providing any subsidies, but later on we found that that is not a good strategy. So this is the same case for our development, low carbon development especially, because in this we are talking about energy transition, a green transition. I think no one can, a sane person can think about can deny this, the green transition, or they oppose the green transition. Definitely everybody want a green transition because it's about the future of our kids, our children. We have to hand over them a world where they can enjoy their life. But fundamental question, what is our ground reality? Like in the solar revolution, we celebrated it, but what is the result? But we did not realize we have to pay to IPPs. Whatever the case, we are installing the solar, ultimately we have to pay the IPPs, either we are using them or not. Ultimately, it led towards the increase in the electricity cost. And today we are talking about that there's a higher cost and the cost of production of the industry. So fundamental question which we forget at that point, what is the ground reality? And this was again a question when we promoted this a CNG-based transportation system in the Pakistan. But we did not look at the long-term picture. At that time, we said, oh, we're going to the low carbon transportation system. But what happened in the long run? We have to import, we have to increase the prices, we have to do everything. So policy should be ground reality based. And that is the best lesson we can learn from China. In 1978, when China started these reforms, they took 2 steps. The town-village partnership, the industry base, and then they took the dual prices. At that time, IMF, World Bank, all the institutions show that your reforms will fail. But what is China today? China is the power in economic power, not only economic, but is the power in the today world. So they followed their ground realities. Not they went about the prescription given by any other institution outside of the country. Neither they went for the shock therapy. But what we are doing, we are ignoring this ground reality. We try to portray ourselves, we are the best, we are the nice guy, we are the guy who are contributing everything. But in that process, we are losing our competitive edge, or we are losing somewhere. So fundamental question should be, when we are trying to any type of the reform, what is our ground reality and where we stand for this green transition? Because if you look at the sustainable development strategy of China, the process started in the early 80s and culminated in the late 2000s. So it's a long-term process according to your industrial base, according to your financial resources, according to your strength, you have to decide. I think if we communicate this thing to China, China will be in a better position to understand, because China has followed this strategy for the last four and a half decade. They are applying it according to their circumstances. Like President Xi Jinping these days is using the term comprehensive opening. First, they went for the capacity increasement, and the Deng Xiaoping said, first we have to increase the capacity, production capacity to export. Then we can go for the opening. But what we are doing, first we are going the opening, then we are not even thinking about the production capacity. The figure you have shown since the 2019, our manufacturing investment has been decreased. And ultimately, I just was looking the figures few days back. Our highest level of the contribution to GDP from the manufacturing came from 2017 and 18 to more than 20%. After that, it declined. Why it declined? I don't know, political instability. I don't know what happened that. Everybody know that. So policy reforms should not be just to portray Pakistan like that. We are doing every good policy. We are doing everything good. Yes, we want to do good. Yes, we want to be a nice guy. But our ground reality, what our ground realities allow us, we will do that. Because any intervention at the cost of the society, at the cost of the livelihood of people, at the cost of the people, will never succeed, whatever the policy is. So to garnish the support of the people, you have to take care of their interest. Like if you have promoted solar, now you have to take care of interest of the common user. Because most of the time, the rich people went for the solar, not the poor people. If they cannot afford the education of their kids, if they cannot afford a 3-time meal, how they can afford to invest the hundreds and thousands on the solar panels? So fundamental thing should be, in my perspective, what is the ground reality of your country and how we can steer that, not just to portray yourself at global forums or some other discussions like that, oh, we are doing everything good. We want to, but we need support for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Shakil Sab. You have rightly mentioned that policy reforms should be linked with the ground realities. With this, I'll come towards the next expert panelist we have with us, Dr. Hassan Daoudbad. He's the Senior Energy Advisor at Energy China. Sir, I would like to listen to your interventions around the Pak-China energy and economic cooperation. And I would also request you to share concluding remarks with everyone. Would you like to join us on podium, or are you comfortable here? Yeah.
Thank you very much. The best part of making the closing remarks and also speaking at the end is usually you have the speakers and the youngsters available. And when these oldies, they ask me as a university professors, what is the best thing about Gen Zs is, and I always see that their resilience is far better than my generation. Because all of my generation would leave after this speak, not listening to the other speaker. But these Gen Zs would stay back and listen to each of the speaker and then make their own conclusion around this. Also, I would like to correct few things here. Based on someone who's worked on CPAC and been guilty of heading the Board of Investment also. If IRFA said that our SECs are doing well, then why is our industrialization going down by 46%? One of the statement has to be correct. Either the industrialization should get better because of the manufacturing, or the SECs should do better. So we need to find out the other thing. Also, when Zainab said that, you know, there is integration between Pakistan and China, we must also remember that there is also integration between 150 other countries which are participating in BRI with China. Total alignment. Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia. So why would they come to Pakistan? And I'm not saying they will not come to Pakistan. Why should they come to Pakistan? And what is the enabling environment with Tom, with my commiseration on him losing the German match? And I got late to office because Morocco was winning today. So, and we have our football being used there. So a lot of pride for us. So I have a short presentation to make conclusion around what Rame said. My friend Zishan has been working with me closely in China and here, and great work HBL is doing. The only bank which has 2 branches, one in Urumqi and one in Beijing. So, let's compare 5Es and GDI. I'm sure all of you must have heard excellencies speaking about it, but we need to understand, and what Shakil said is, next slide please, is absolutely correct in terms of why are we speaking on this today? Why is it so important? It is important because we're living in a turbulent world. And this is going to become difficult for youngsters who are sitting here. Because the closure time for CPEC, perhaps, I'm sure it will be extended, but it's 2035. So I might not be on this planet by that time. Most of these youngsters will be. So they need to understand how and where we will find and leverage the endowments that we have. We have great geography, and we are leveraging that in US and Iran conflict. We have great human resource, youngsters are here. And we have great talent in making policies. Great talent. God has gifted us this talent. But what God took away from us was the capacity to implement those policies. उस वक्त खुदा ने हमारे हाथ से वो ले ली और इसीलिए फिर हम यहाँ पर बैठे हैं. And I'll give you one example of sustainability. If I am doing this seminar in the best hotel in China, in Beijing, Shanghai, Urumqi, the temperature will not be more than 26 degrees. Here I've been freezing for last 1 hour because the temperature, no one cares, because when you lower the temperature, the environment is spoiled. So therefore, we should not make tall claims because, again, as I said, there's a lot of turbulence. 90% of the youth lives in developing countries. In Africa, I spoke about Africa. Every 5th person will be African in next 30 years. 68% plus population of Pakistan is below age 30. So if you do not build their capacity and not give them the right kind of pathways, like skills, the apprenticeship, and the enterprise to build the gap and fill in the gap between GDIs and FVI, my generation will fail in the work that we are all assigned to. And then, of course, the China-Pakistan economic corridor. So the challenge and opportunity is not the youth potential. The challenge is the access to skill, jobs, digital infrastructure, finance and institutional pathway. And the biggest challenge I'll tell you today is our 4G and 5G and 6G claims that we make. And just tell this 4G, 5G to some youngster living in North Waziristan or as soon as you cross Peshawar. And if you really want to learn that, go to China and learn that. Because it's all about inclusive development. Sustainability, ladies and gentlemen, is about inclusive development. If we leave our rural development behind and do not create that rural-urban synergy, which is so important, then all these fancy 5-star hotel seminars are of no use. And therefore, we also need to understand, go to the next slide, this is not working. Understand the 5-year plan of China, which they have just announced recently. From technology self-reliance, industrial upgrading, green development, economic resilience, opening up, and global trade. You know, when in 2018, Trump announced these tariffs, China has been preparing for that from that time into self-reliance. So for me, in one of the TV interviews recently, I asked, what is the biggest advantage, economic advantage Pakistan can leverage from Iran and US conflict? And I said, of course, I say this on television all the time. I said that we are not doing this for leveraging economic benefit. We are doing this for global peace. But are we prepared to leverage anything? Because the biggest lesson this war and COVID gave to us was to go towards self-reliance, to go towards not the Iran pipeline, but to finding natural resources in Pakistan, gas, oil, mineral resources in this great earth which God has given us. Because Iran pipeline or 100 megawatt for Gwadar from Iran will have its challenges when things change, because, you know, there are no friends and foes in diplomacy. It's just national objectives and agendas. So they might change for Iran someday. Today we are friendly, tomorrow things might change. So look within, not without. Like China is doing. Technology self-reliance, industrial upgrading, green development, reliance and opening up. Just look at the word reliance, how many times that has been. So we have to go towards that self-reliance also, ladies and gentlemen. And we always fail in developing that. Next, please. So what has been done is not just that we have moved to GDI and now we're talking about global governance initiative. It is a step by step gradual development towards inclusive global South development. We missed this chance of economic rejuvenation about a decade back. And each time this industrial revolution got better, we missed our chance. Indonesia benefited, Japan benefited, and we were making those policies, isn't it? Our planning commission was making those policies. China benefited. And here we are talking about great China and not again looking within, again looking outside for solution. China will help us and provide a solution based on their own experiences. But we have to look at our own characteristics and experience. We have our own greatness and beauty and natural endowments. And therefore, next slide, please. I'll just skip few slides and go to the end. Agli slide pe jaiye. Agli pe jaiye. Agli pe jaiye. I'll skip this and I'll go. Agli pe jaiye. I'll go quickly because मुझे कहा गया कि इसको खत्म कर. आगे जाइए. आगे. So what is the joint risk mitigation strategy? और याद रखिए, youngsters, having risk is not bad. जितने risks ज़्यादा आप identify करेंगे, that goes to your advantage. The challenge is not to have a risk mitigation plan. If you have a risk mitigation plan, आने दें जितने risk आते हैं, देख लेंगे. और सीख लेंगे लोगों से अगर सीखना चाहें, China से, India से, Indonesia से, Malaysia से, if you want to learn. So the first thing in terms of governance, and we can make all our tall claims, is to align GDP with Udan Pakistan and build domestic institutional capacity. SECP बहुत अच्छी बातें करती है, लेकिन वो अंग्रेजी में करती है. अगर चाइनीज इन्वेस्टर ने यहाँ पर आना है, जिसको अंग्रेजी नहीं आती, तो वो क्या करे? ये टर्म्स, ये जार्गन्स, ये कहाँ से सीखे वो? तो यहाँ पे एक इंस्टीट्यूशन है जो हैंड होल्डिंग कर सकें. आई रिप्रेजेंट अ यूनिवर्सिटी. मैंने बड़ी कोशिश की अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी को कन्विंस कर सकूं कि अगर कोई चाइनीज इन्वेस्टर आए, वी शुड मेक मनी बाय डूइंग दिस. ओनली HBL, one bank is doing this right now. All others are waiting for heavens, waiting for Allah, as this. So हम एक दूसरे से भी नहीं सीखते. So if Punjab is developing, then KP can learn from Punjab. If HBL is doing great work, the other banks can build their capacity. And then, of course, shift to productivity-driven financing and sustainable financial solution. अगर आपके productivity-driven नहीं होंगे, अगर आपने import base यहाँ पे चीजें लगानी और प्लास्टिक की बोतलें ही बनानी है, तो फिर कोई फायदा नहीं. Of course, export-led growth and adding value to the endowment that you have. And then expand cooperation beyond roads and ports into SEZs, manufacturing, agri-tech, and digital economy. And even donkey meat, why not? And there's a great company which is doing great work in Gwadar and donkey skin and donkey meat and exporting a lot of it. After a lot of effort, after the Chinese investor made a tweet which was responded by none other than Prime Minister of Pakistan. तो अगर प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने सारा काम करना है तो फिर हम चलते हैं, हम जाके घर पे बैठते हैं. देयर हैज टू बी इंस्टीट्यूशन. अगर BOI SIFC दोनों मिलके अगर एक चाइनीज इन्वेस्टर जो कि डोंकी स्किन की एक नीश प्रोडक्ट पे काम कर रहे हैं, हम नहीं काम कर सकते, एंड द प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैज टू इंटरवेन, देन अगेन वेटिंग फॉर अल्लाह. And then, of course, expand affordable digital infrastructure, skill training, and technology sharing. I was teaching in IM Sciences when I was Board of Investment in KP. So COVID came, so we told our students कि जी अब आप classes online होंगी. So all my students from Waziristan and outside Peshawar, they said, there is no internet there. आप कैसे online classes करेंगे? So what we suggested them कि आप आइए पिशावर, वहां से अपने घरों से कोविड में और इस पिशावर में रहें या हॉस्टल के प्रेमिसेस में रहें. हॉस्टल में नहीं रह सकते, हॉस्टल के प्रेमिसेस में रहें, एंड देन यू नो वी प्रोवाइड देम दिस डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. So we should be honest in what we're doing. Otherwise, sustainability is one of the biggest factor of enabling environment which Tom spoke. Our Quran also tells us कि जो वादा करो वो पूरा करो. सो आप जो इंसेंटिव्स देते हैं, अगर आप नहीं कर सकते तो खुदारा मत दें. रोड शोज करते हैं, मैं हमेशा कहता हूं कि रोड शोज जितने करते हैं या इस तरह के सेमिनार करते हैं, इनके पैसे बचाएं और एक इंडस्ट्री लगा लें और वहीं पे सेमिनार कर. एंड देन लास्ट बट नॉट द लीस्ट, प्रमोट रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी, क्लाइमेट अडेप्शन. आई डू नॉट एक्सेप्ट दिस जार्गन जो कि हमारे पॉलिटिशियंस कहते हैं, सम ऑफ द स्कॉलर्स ऑल्सो, कि सोलराइजेशन से सिर्फ अमीर आदमी को फायदा हो. अमीर आदमी को नहीं फायदा हुआ. अमीर आदमी जनरेटर भी लगा सकता है. फायदा मिडिल क्लास को हुआ है, और मिडिल क्लास इज द इंजन ऑफ ग्रोथ इन एनी सोसाइटी. लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन, डू नॉट टेल द यंगस्टर्स, डू नॉट लेट दीज पॉलिटिशियंस टेल यू कि जी सिर्फ अमीर आदमी की दुनिया या गरीब आदमी के मसाइल हैं. मिडिल क्लास के भी मसाइल हैं जो सस्टेनेबिलिटी से ठीक होते हैं. सो अगर सोलर मेरे घर में लगा है और मुझे बिजली सस्ती मिल रही है, तो इसमें क्या मसला है गवर्नमेंट? इसका मसला ये है कि चाहे वो 800 मेगावाट्स के पावर प्लांट्स हों या एक 8 किलोवाट का घर पे लगा हुआ सोलर प्लांट हो, गवर्नमेंट की कैपेसिटी नहीं है IPP करने की, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करने की, चाहे एक घर वाले के साथ करना हो या इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन या किसी बड़ी इंडस्ट्री से करना. सो द गवर्नमेंट हैज टू बिल्ड देयर कैपेसिटी. ये बाकी सारे जार्गन है. गो टू द लास्ट स्लाइड. तो आगे जाइए और आगे जाइए. CPEC है बिल्कुल. सो टू थिंग्स रिमेंबर. वन इज द चाइनीज ओल्ड सेइंग, फ्लाई लाइक फ्लाइंग गीस. सो देयरफॉर select the best person for this course. You may not be as bad as I am because the clumsy ones are behind. Select the best person. You cannot select the best person because 71% आपकी flying range बढ़ती है with the right leadership and the right pathway to go. And then, of course, what is said in Quran, you know, man will have nothing except what he strives for. So if you do not and cannot work on these, then see you in next seminar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. The next session will start at 2:15 p.m. The lunch is served outside, so please join us back at 2:15. Thank you.